All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Pitkin County Board of County Commissioners work session on Tuesday, January 28th. I just would like to check in and see if we can hear Francie Jacober, who is one of our commissioners joining us on Zoom. Francie, can you talk?
I can talk.
Okay, and we can hear you. Great. And the rest of us are here in the room today on this very sunny, spring-like January day. So I will open us up and invite our team from the Solid Waste Center to come on up. We're going to hear about the Pitkin County Solid Waste Diversion Plan. And Kathy, please, this is Kathy Hall. Please introduce yourself and your team, and then just let me know if, do you wish to get through your presentation and then take questions, or do you invite us to ask questions as we go?
Ask questions as you go.
Okay, that's great.
I got a question.
Okay.
Why? Why are you leaving us?
I know, hard decision. So this is my last Board of County Commissioners meeting, so passing it on to others. So hopefully they carry on the torch. But I'm Kathy Hall. I'm the Solid Waste Director for Pitkin County.
Cameron Garcia, I'm the Solid Waste Diversion Analyst for Pitkin County.
And we're here also with Fernando Ruiz Zuniga. Sorry, Fernando. He's a scale house operator, and he had a big part to play in our waste diversion plan, which we're going to talk about today.
All right.
And I'll bring up the presentation.
And we'll just note, Kathy Hall has accepted a position in Minnesota, and we will miss her greatly. She has shepherded Pitkin County into many awards for all of our waste diversion efforts, and I think the top county in the state for the percent of waste that we do divert out of the landfill.
Absolutely. So
thank you
yeah,
for
that's
that.
one of my pride and joy I'll be taking with me.
Okay.
Yes, we lead the state of Colorado, us in Boulder. 2023, we had about a 42% diversion rate. So really a great accomplishment because we're so far from the Front Range where everything goes to mostly. So we're really proud of that fact. And good news I read today that Grand Junction Bruin Waste is opening a single stream MRF materials recovery facility. So that's going to help significantly. So encourage them to do that because that'll keep us from driving recyclables all the way to Denver.
Didn't Eagle have a big?
They have a dual stream MRF where it's all source separated. We used to go there, but the cost of it was way too high. So it still made more sense to take it to Denver. Yeah. I remember that. They were very disappointed. We got a letter of disappointment when we pulled out of there. I was like, oh, no, not a letter of disappointment. So, yeah, lots going on in the waste world. So we're here today to talk about waste diversion planning. This is something I've wanted to do since I started at Pitkin County. A lot of communities call it zero waste plans. We are, okay. Oh, she's got that. So we are, we don't call it, I've decided not to call it a zero waste plan because it sets you up for disappointment. Zero waste is nearly impossible.
Hang on a sec. We seem to be having a little technical difficulty with Zoom. Francie, are you still on with us? Can you see the?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well,
I'm on and I can see the screen and
okay.
everything
All
seems
right.
hunky-dory.
Well, let's keep moving until things stop working.
All
Let's
right.
hope they can
Let me know.
power through.
Worry about it. Like infinity.
Yeah, zero waste. Everything's recyclable. You just have to have a market for it. And that's pretty impossible. So we decided to call it just waste diversion planning. And we'll go into the details. But I want to point out, we did this internally. We didn't hire a consultant, which was about a $50,000 to $75,000 savings for the county. I worked environmental consulting for 20 years and wrote a number of these reports. Cameron's been in the business a long time. And Fernando's just out of college and is good at Excel and managing data. So we decided.
Really good at graphs.
Yeah. So we'll keep this in-house and save the county some money and make it a usable report because a lot of consultant reports end up on a shelf. And I've written dozens and dozens of them when I was in consulting, and I know they're sitting on a shelf. So we wanted to avoid that. Can you afford it? Okay, so I'll just give a highlight of our current diversion waste efforts. So single stream recycling, we transitioned to that in 2014, I believe. And it was a huge cost savings for the county at the time. And what that is everything goes in the same bin, gets hauled down to Denver, and they sort it down in Denver. My pride and joy compost and soils program. We used to have the second largest compost program in the state. We're now the third. Was Waste Management on the Front Range opened up a 90,000 ton facility. There's no way. But we did compost record amounts this year. We're about 16,000 tons. That was up from about 14,500 tons last year, or 2023. So the program's growing like crazy. We have new equipment up there that processes it much faster, and again, still a really great product. A year-round household hazardous waste facility, so everybody has chemicals, electronics. So we take that in year-round. That's a unique program for such a small community to have a year-round household hazardous waste facility. The other one of my favorite programs is the unique diversion. This is, I think, where we make the biggest community impact besides the Motherlode Mercantile. Books. We all have so many books, and before we couldn't do anything with them. Now they go down to Boulder, the EcoCycles program, and they get sold mostly to a wholesaler, and it funds a low-income reading program for the community. Mattresses, record number of mattresses last year in 2024, 1,900 mattresses. It's a lot of mattresses, and the trailer makes me itch. But it's a good thing because an average mattress takes up about 2 to 3 cubic yards of landfill airspace. You run them over with a 95,000 pound compactor, they spring right back up. Mm-hmm. So that's another great program we use. Plastic film is our newest. So that goes to a program in Pueblo called Driven Asphalt or Driven Plastics, and it gets made into asphalt. It replaces a virgin polymer. The plastic film gets flaked and replaces a virgin polymer, and it can be made into new roads for Colorado. I've started collecting plastic film in my house. It's amazing how much plastic film. It's bubble wrap, bread bags, the little bubble mailers. It's amazing how much plastic film we have. It's estimated that there's still about 2,500 tons of plastic film going into the landfill. So this is a great new program because plastic film cannot go into the regular single stream recycling. And then textiles, of course. Another one, again, I have so many favorite programs. The Motherlode Mercantile. It's the hot shopping spot of Aspen. Last year was estimated we diverted about 133 tons of good reusable items. Natalie is running that program now, and it's just busier and busier. Last week we had about 500 skis. Company came up, bought all the skis, and they're going to make furniture out of them. Because I left work and I was walking to my car, and I was like, where'd all the skis go? So they look for some new ski furniture coming out. Another great thing that Natalie's doing, she was contacted by an organization. She's partnering with Habitat for Humanity. They're seeking plates and dishware and, you know.
Oh, hang on a sec. Sorry.
Oops,
Francie
sorry.
said Zoom is frozen.
Now it's okay. It's still
I don't know. Thank you, exclamation point. We paused the presentation.
Oh, technology.
Johnny.
How are things working on grassroots? You're okay? Okay.
Yeah, good over here.
Okay, hang on everyone while we
The
get,
internet's been dropping on and off today.
Yeah.
Should have had some jokes prepared or something.
all right. Francie, let me know when you can hear us.
give me a sec.
Still stuck. Kathy, do you get the there are, I get mailings from like MIT on circular economy programs. You get all those? I just forwarded one to you because I thought you should go lecture there. You could help-
Yeah, I do,
you
actually,
could show them that
yeah.
actually what's real.
Yeah.
Hang on a sec, let's check in. Francie, can you hear us? Is it working?
It's not frozen.
It's the like audio video. It's not letting me.
What does that mean?
Oh, boogers.
Okay. Why don't we take a 2-minute break on grassroots?
Yeah, we had the same problem today at the ACRA meeting, at the Institute, and they had a video.
Hmm.
You couldn't get Zoom up and running.
That's soon.
Glad Rosa's doing this. I get all flustered. Yeah.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for your patience. We are having some IT difficulties that are persisting throughout the county. So we are back discussing our waste diversion plan. I want to check in and see if Francie Jacober, who's joining us from home, can hear us.
I can hear you. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
we can hear you. Thanks, Francie.
Perfect.
All right, Kathy, go ahead. Sorry, we'll have to pick up a little time, but I'm sure you can do it.
We left off at the Motherland Mercantile, and a great thing that Natalie's doing right now, she's partnering with Habitat for Humanity. Then another group asked for donations of dishware, mugs, for the LA fires, people that lost everything in the LA fires. So Habitat is going to transport all of it out there, and they've been collecting it down there, and we'll get some household items out to the people that lost their homes. And then the last program, which was a unique program, construction and demolition debris diversion. This is a really innovative program that is leading the state. We're getting people copying us around the state and around the country. And Aspen just adopted a very similar ordinance, so that's great news. And we'll start seeing hopefully some good diversion coming out of Aspen. But Cameron will talk more about that in a little bit later. So where we're at right now. Yep. So we did a waste sort in 2022, and this waste diversion plan, we did our baseline year as 2022, because that's when we had good data. We'll plan on doing a waste sort every 5 years, so the next one in 2027. That is where you actually take random sample loads of trash and pick through it. It's a gross job. But it's the best way to dive in and see what's still going into the trash. And we can provide a copy of that if anybody's interested. But what we found was 50% of the trash is still organics, and most of those organics could have been composted. As many of us know, organics is the leading generator of methane or greenhouse gas emissions out of a landfill. So that's the low-hanging fruit we're going to be focusing on probably. 26,000 tons of CO2 equivalent were generated from the waste in the landfill in 2022 estimated. And again, we use the EPA's, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's land, what do they call it, the WARM model. So that's just the industry standard to calculate methane, greenhouse gas emissions from trash. So that 26,000 tons of CO2 is equivalent to adding 6,000 gasoline-powered vehicles to the road annually. That's consuming annually 2,925,600 gallons of gasoline. That's just added to the environment. And then, or 144 rail cars of coal burned annually. So that's huge. So why we wanted to do this waste diversion plan was really focusing on getting the recyclables and the organics out of the landfill and reduce these methane emissions. We're tied very closely to Michael Port's climate action plan. So we're working closely with him and reporting and helping him meet his numbers. Go back up, but there's one more really interesting fact. It's estimated that in 2022, $649,000 worth of recyclables were trashed. And how we calculate this, we take when we send it to Denver Waste Management, sorts it into commodities and sells those commodities. So based on what we estimated still in the trash, that's a lot of value going into the trash in 1 year. So again, we really need to get recyclables out of the trash.
Yeah, and a lot of our initial waste diversion planning that we did was much of, I guess, the middle to late part of last year. We looked at our current programs, and it was much easier to see what we had, which there are a lot. Kathy outlined a lot of the programs that we do have, and how can we make them better? What's the efficiency levels there that we can increase without having a big program change or having to develop new programs and such? So after we did that, what we're trying to do is get a 50% waste diversion by 2030. That was something that we talked about internally. It was something that's achievable and something that we can really strive for as a community. Looking at different initiatives that I'll be discussing here in a little bit, it's something I think the community can get behind, and it's something we can achieve. So what we're calling it is our 50 by 30 waste diversion plan, and that's a goal of reaching 50% diversion by 2030. And then we took it one step further and looked a little bit further out, and looking at a 75% diversion of MSW, and that's again our MSW rate diversion by 2040. So again, that one will take a little bit more planning, but with us moving forward with our 30 by 50 or our 50 by 30, we really think that we can achieve these these diversion rates in the future.
And just to step back, this plan is focusing on municipal solid waste, MSW call it. We kept C&D, construction demolition debris, out of it for now because that has a whole separate program that's being tracked and followed. So it's tied together, but we're really focusing on just the general everyday trash.
Yeah.
Can you remind us what are we to now? You've got 5 years to get to 50%. Where
About
are we?
42%. I haven't run the 2024 numbers yet. I think they'll be a little bit higher, but yeah, about 42%.
So we've got 5 years to get to pick up 8%, and then you're going to try to pick up 25% in another 10 years. So that's a little ambitious, right? Because it's going to get harder.
It's going to get harder. I think easily we'll meet 50%. Not easily, but I think that's very doable. 75%, that's when you're getting down to the nitpicky.
And we talked about that. Yeah, you're really looking at the littler numbers in terms of your waste volumes going in. You know, looking at some of those 5% of the component by weight that's going in that you're going to try to divert out of there. So yeah, I think it's achievable. But again, with a concerted effort, community effort, and ours out there, again, we talked a lot about those percentages, and I think they're attainable.
If we can get food out of the trash,
Yeah.
we'll easily hit 50%. So about 5,500 tons of food waste is still going into the trash. So we captured about 1,900 tons this year. So we got a lot of work to do, but food waste would really make a big mark.
Go ahead, Patty. Yes.
So, commercial food waste composting diversion is required by the city, correct? But not residential.
Not yet.
Not yet.
That's what I was gonna add the yet. Do you have any idea when that's coming on or how we can help with that?
I believe this year they have it staged this year, so that restaurants had to do it a year ago, October.
A year ago, right.
This year, all businesses, including grocery stores, are added into the mix, and then I believe in 2 years, residential kicks off, required. I'm a little worried about that.
Well, residential, when you have dumpsters, is a piece of cake. It's residential when you don't have dumpsters,
And
especially with bare pop.
and I'm not a big proponent of requiring residents to come, because you got to want to do it.
Yeah.
And if you
We
don't
do
do
it
it,
in our neighborhood. I mean, our bins are full.
Yeah, mine
yeah,
too.
and that's great. So I'm fingers crossed that the city can do enough education. Denver tried it and made it mandatory for a section, and it destroyed the compost program.
Yeah.
They were just trashing.
Contaminations, no tolerance for contamination. So I'm always a little weary of making residents, forcing them to do it. But
Yeah, and the effectiveness of any of those type of diversion programs is the collection piece of it. There's always a contamination issue, but it is the collection part of things. Is how do you collect that material, because it's something that can't sit around for a long, long time
Does it
without having its own
compost?
unique issues.
it smells.
So yeah, the collection aspect of things is the challenging portion of that.
Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking, the waste stream is probably going to change. It'll have to, and I think maybe there'll be more efficiencies, or just the way things are packaged we see that changing. And I think that could help us get to this goal if the stream, before it even gets trashed and collected,
Yeah.
it changes. And the situation we have at our house is we're trying to make compost, and we do, but we've got like this messy countertop compost bin. And so I just divided our trash bin under the counter into two, so you can do compost on one side and trash on the other. I'm thinking it needs to be so easy that people just they're trashing it, but it's going in the right slot.
Exactly.
And we haven't figured that out at the house yet that's in a satisfactory way, but it kind of helps think that somebody's going to come up with a system that works so smoothly that it's just second nature.
I do it easily. I have a composting bin with a compostable bag in it, and when it gets full,
Yeah, we do that too, but it's additional steps that some people aren't going to take,
Yeah.
right? Some people just won't do it unless it's so easy or obvious.
Francie, you have your hand up? Sorry.
Yes, I just wanted to comment on how many hogs could be raised with all that food waste.
Right.
If we just had a way to get that food waste to a farm, it would be incredible. We don't have any food waste at our house. It either goes to the chickens or to our compost pile.
Yeah.
So we're not contributing to your food waste, Kathy.
Well, that's okay.
That's
That's
okay.
okay. We got
So,
plenty.
how many hogs, Francie?
Well, I don't know, how much weight was it?
This year's about 1,900 tons of food waste,
Oh
but
my
we still
God.
have about 5,500 in the trash every year.
Yeah.
you
That
know,
would be
I can
probably about 1,900 hogs raised to full weight.
I can just see how it's gonna go over in your neighborhood and people have hog
Francie's hog
farms.
farm. Francie's hog farm.
I mean, we used to raise pigs. We haven't done it for a while, but at that time, when we would go to the grocery store and try to take their expired vegetables, they wouldn't let us take it. They said, "We don't have any proof that you're not going to consume this yourself," and they wouldn't give it to us.
Yeah.
Thanks for that input, Francie.
Well, kind of, and then this is just a graph showing that if we reach that yellow line is where we're at now through 2023, and then that gray line shoots up. This is greenhouse gas emissions diverted if we reach our recycling goals. Those orange columns is the recycling, the estimated recycling we can get. It's showing a little bit more because we have household hazardous waste like paint, scrap metal, e-waste in there, but the state doesn't count that as an MSW recyclable, so that number looks a little higher. But we threw it in there just to show. So that gray line, if you follow that up, by 2040, if we hit 75% diversion, we'll divert about 40,000 metric tons of CO2 emissions annually. That yellow line as it dips down, that is if we do nothing at all. So we won't be diverting that, we'll be contributing. So the gray line is what we really want to look at. That's the CO2 tons of emissions we divert. And that'll make Michael Port really happy because it'll meet his greenhouse gas climate change. Right? All right. So just some 2022 numbers and offsets of CO2 equivalents. So our diversion programs diverted in 2022 alone 14,212 tons of CO2 equivalent. That's equal to removing 3,017 cars from the road or conserving 1.6 million gallons of gasoline. So I think I said in the budget presentation, conserving that much gasoline kind of made up for the fuel we use through our fleet and landfill equipment.
Question, when you were talking about removing 3,000 cars from the road, is that like 3,000 cars for a day, or is that 3,000 cars for a year?
A year, yeah.
For a year, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, this is using the EPA's WARM model, so you plug in numbers and they calculate it.
Right.
If we get a single stream recycling facility in Grand Junction, that's even going to help more because we're transporting a semi truck almost daily right now because of the holiday. We're still catching up from the holidays to Denver. That's huge. It's huge. So
Cut that in half or more.
I think so.
Nice.
Absolutely. So a lot of will go into these numbers in the future. So, and our plan is to really come back every year and just report on how our progress is doing.
Yeah, and again, like I stated earlier, to achieve our 50% and 75% diversion rates into the future, we initially will look at our current programs, make adjustments, trying to find efficiencies where we can try to maximize those waste diversion programs the most that we can initially. And then introducing new initiatives and outreach efforts. And when we did our planning, we set 5 apart as these are our initial 5 that we're going to do that we can really think can achieve that 50% waste diversion by 2030. And they are a cardboard landfill ban. And again, I'll go into more detail about each one of these specifically. expand our food waste collection, the scraps food program, enhance outreach and education programs, which always, working in the solid waste industry for the years that I have, I see so much success with just the outreach and education of what you do in the community and what that does to your overall diversion rates. So that's going to be a high priority. Audit county-owned buildings for waste reduction, see what we're doing and what kind of efficiencies we can find internally to help the cause. And then develop a regional waste coalition, looking to engage municipalities, businesses, nearby landfills, and other stakeholders to strengthen our diversion efforts as we move forward. That's something that Kathy and myself had talked about, and that's something probably later this year we'll probably really start working towards of doing and getting our team put together. Again, that a regional coalition. For a cardboard landfill ban, again, we'll look at, we have single stream. It's a part of our single stream, but how can we make that better? How can we divert more of that out? Because it is still a pretty large component of what goes into the landfill. And if you look nationally, if you look at the statistics, it's one of the higher components that is still going in. And it's one of those that has a very, very high recycle rate. It's easily recycled and made into new products without a whole lot of processing. So that's something that we really want to look at. And again, look internally at our efficiencies of what currently we have, and then also look at some of the Colorado cardboard bans in Fort Collins. Look at how they're doing, look at the struggles they may have with it, see how it can apply to our area, and even if it does, and move in that direction of trying to take that component out of the landfill. And also another thing we need to look at is look at requirements for cardboard and paper recycling and having specific requirements for events, festivals that are in unincorporated Pitkin County. That could actually move the scale to our favor. And just working a little bit more with those event planners to try to have a better or a more accessible recycling option for participants in those events. I see we have a hand, Francie. Did you have your hand up?
No, you answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Can I ask a quick one?
Yes.
Yeah, great,
Just,
go ahead.
I went and bought a cardboard box the other day down at the UPS store, and I think they wanted $25 for a cardboard box. And I was shocked and I just thought, we're recycling this, but often a lot of these boxes could easily be reused. It's just finding the right size for the right person at the right time. But has anyone ever tried to do a reuse program before trashing it and making new cardboard out of it? Just seems
I was at a conference once. It was a few years ago, and a guy had a whole business around it. If you moved, had a bunch of cardboard boxes, you could send it back to him. The logistics were really hard. I wonder if he's still in business, but he would take these back. He'd drop off locations, he'd take them back, and then redistribute them out to somebody else who was moving.
you probably get a few uses out of them that way.
Oh yeah, we people. I'll go up into the recycle pile. I need a certain size box, and cardboard's 42% of our single stream recycling. So.
Yeah, and it's those type of programs or those type of ideas we need to kind of look at and see, if it's something that we can easily even just do at the landfill as an opportunity for people to pick up those type of boxes. So we can look into those things. Another key initiative we're going to be looking at is expanding our food waste collection. With talking earlier with the City of Aspen's ordinances and what they're doing, which we've seen just with the initial Aspen's initial prohibiting food waste disposal from businesses with a food retail license. We've seen a 50% increase at our composting site. So with that was pretty substantial. So what we need to do is keep that momentum going. And again, encouraging the residential aspect of diverting their food waste, but then also to look, because this is still 20% of the food component by weight that's going into the landfill. And again, something that breaks down methane gas generation. But if we can get that material diverted at even a higher rate, just the amount of compost we can produce, which is such a valuable resource, as we know, especially around here. It's highly used and marketed around here. So something we need to consider.
We saw the MSW municipal solid waste numbers drop in 2024, and I'm totally crediting Aspen's food waste ban.
Yeah.
Getting that much more out, so we saw those numbers come down. C&D, construction demo, went up, but regular trash went down. So
And they didn't have big bear issues with it,
Haven't
which
heard.
they thought they were anticipating having more attractants for bears in the alleyways and stuff, but
no, they invested in those metal Barracuda bins that we have. We store some of them at the landfill. We have quite a number, but they did a lot of education and outreach. And once those bears will try and get into the Barracuda bear-proof bins, they give up after a while because it's
Not that easy.
they're smart.
Do you collect information relative to the spoiled, collection? Like, do you know where in the county the scraps program is having better success with lower rates of
No,
spoiled?
I don't have good data on that. Evergreen Zero Waste is the primary hauler now. They could probably provide it.
I just wonder, maybe I would wonder if there's like, okay, this neighborhood has closed bins in a trash room with, free 5-gallon bins at each household. Like if there's sort of stuff like that, you can evaluate to say, and they're producing more and cleaner,
I bet
scraps.
Evergreen would have that, and that would be a good exercise. See if they'd share that. But yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions
Yeah.
right now? Okay, keep
Another
going.
key initiative is enhance our outreach and education program. We're going to look at what our current outreach programs, revamp them to try to boost community participation in all of our waste diversion plans. I don't know if you've seen just recently our Penny Prospector, our new, I guess,
Mascot, yeah.
for the landfill that's going to be now moving forward with a lot of our outreach will be based around Penny Prospector.
Is that the donkey? Or
Yeah.
just different from the donkey?
Jack Aspen is her sidekick.
Okay.
I love that.
If
Yeah,
you're
I'm paying
familiar with
attention.
the landfill, Jade Bath is Penny Prospector. It was unintentional, but we're like, so we're making an effort to get into the 4th of July parade. So more to come. You might see Penny Prospector. We just need a well-behaved donkey to go along.
Jack
That's
in the
hard to
front.
find.
Yeah.
Well, let me know if you need any kids for your float. I'll lend a few.
Oh yeah. Throw them all out there.
The rebranding has already began too because the initial primary compost product is now Prospector Compost, and selling it under that name. So yeah, we're really going to use our current contractor that we have, or our current consultant that we have on contract in our marketing, to really focus on developing an outreach strategy that we can maximize that effort and really get this information out there. Also, an important aspect that I hold dear to my heart, and I've talked with Kathy about this, is next year of coming up with an initial budget request to have a school curriculum designed. Getting some of these concepts, these environmental concepts, sustainability concepts, put into the school district, and it meets their content standards. The teachers can teach to it, and it talks about some of these ideas. Getting the kids engaged at a very early age, I think, is very important, especially when they get older, and then these programs really mean something more to them because they're using them. So they've always heard about them, they've always been a part of them. So developing a school curriculum is going to be something in next year that I would really like to focus on and try to get this into the school district too.
Yes,
You
Patty.
need to talk to my daughter.
Okay,
She runs a preschool.
that's a great place to
She
start.
starts at that age, and then they
Yeah.
go home and teach their parents.
Yeah, right.
And
yeah.
she takes them out and cleans the Rio Grande Trail during Earth Week and shows them. They wear their gloves and their goggles and she's got them all decked out, and she shows them what's recyclable, what's not, what's trash, what you do.
that's
And
great.
it's amazing
Yeah.
how into it these kids get.
Very.
She's got some pretty good, it's part of her curriculum for her preschool.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
See
it's
what she
something I'll
might
reach
have
out
that I
to.
can
Yeah,
share.
I'd love to see what she's had. So
Pretty fun.
Moving forward, moving here, the audit county-owned buildings for waste reduction, that's pretty self-explanatory. We'll just need to get in, look of what we're doing good, what we need to expand on, to try to expand our internal efforts to divert more material from here.
I'd love to get into the airport. The airport could really,
Oh, yes.
For composting,
Yeah,
just better bins and signage and
yeah,
so,
yeah.
we know someone.
yeah.
And then our last waste diversion initiative is develop the Regional Waste Coalition. And again, that's going to engage a lot of different municipalities, local landfills, businesses, community members to kind of come up with a total effort to try to achieve our 50 and 75% diversion rates. It's going to take all of us to do it. So looking at unincorporated Pitkin County and getting other towns involved, it's going to be very important. So that'll be a key aspect to our planning efforts. Any
Great,
questions
go
on
ahead.
those initiatives?
Just on that, do you find that people who would be bringing stuff to our landfill will take it to South Canyon because it's an easier dump? No, so I was just thinking, are you trying to bring other nearby landfills in line so you're all have the similar policies? for that reason?
Yeah, we don't see many people bypassing us. It just, when we've done transportation studies, it doesn't make sense. And we're good friends with Liz Morrow, who used to work at the Pitkin County landfill, so she's all on board. It's just a different dynamic down there.
Really?
A little bit. They don't have as much money. And their city council's a little more hesitant to invest in diversion programs, but she's trying her hardest, so.
City or county?
That's city, South Canyon.
Oh, really?
And then there's Garfield County, which is a county owned.
And you heard what they did, though, with their mandatory trash pickup. Even for people who don't use their service, they still charge them.
I got calls about that. I'm like, I have nothing to do with that. So.
Yeah. And, yeah. And they
Yeah.
said, well, it's to maintain our landfill. She said, what about the people who you don't charge who use your landfill? Why aren't they paying a fee? And they just dropped off a bunch of trash cans in all the neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And people were like totally unaware. It was not approached well
Yeah, it didn't go
or
well.
received well.
Um,
We educate ahead of time. Thank you very much.
and I'm not going to, we can't, as a county, can't do franchise agreements.
Yeah.
So, City of Aspen could, but yeah, we can't.
And I have one service provider for trash pickup in Glenwood Springs.
Okay.
Carbondale did the same thing.
Jeff, go ahead.
So before we move off of MSW to C&D, is the diversion, the 50% diversion aggressive enough for 2030, given the new ordinances for food waste diversion?
Good point.
I think we can exceed it. I think
Yeah.
you're right. I think we could up it and still be okay.
Or do we need an interim, 2035 at 60% or something, so another check-in that's not a decade out?
Yeah, we could certainly do that. And again, the plan is, I won't be here, but
Someone will be.
somebody,
yeah, sure, they
Cameron
can
will
do
be
that.
here to update every year and then adjust. Like, hey, we met 50% by 2027. Let's shoot higher.
Yeah, Jeff, in all of our plans, and especially working with Kathy on this one, because we've looked at these plans for 20 years, and a lot of them do become just dust collectors. And when she approached me about helping write this with her and Fernando, I said, well, I want this to be a living document. I don't want this just to sit on the desk and get forgotten. I want this to be something that we can update as things change. Just like Greg says, new things come. Maybe there's a whole change in the industry that then we can flex a little bit and adjust what we're trying to do here. So yeah, I want this document to be kind of a living document where annually, maybe every 2 years, we're looking at where we're at, of course, but then also making those key adjustments that maybe can push us over that 50%. Because you're right, maybe in 2035 we're at 65%, and having to maybe forecast out a little bit further or whatever that may be. But yeah, I really want this to be a usable document that provides that roadmap for us to achieve the goals that we all want to achieve for our community.
And I'll be stalking y'all. You'll probably see me peeking in the window. Sure.
All right, we'll move move to C&D. And again, the waste diversion plan is specifically looking at MSW, but that's not to say, the C&D diversion program is just staying there doing its thing. Picken County, and the numbers you're looking at is actually looking from the first day it started, the Green Halo started. So in 2020, looking to now. So it's looking through all of these years.
Look at that. I know.
77%. It's amazing diversion rate. That's incredible to think about. But that's not to say that we're going to rest and just allow it to continue just to kind of do its thing. There's a lot of things that I would like to do with the C&D program, to looking at even increase the recovery rate even more from local construction sites, working more with the city of Aspen with their program to see how we can achieve even a higher diversion rate or recovery rate.
So we're at 35% now. I would recommend, I think we could easily move it to 50% and still people get their deposits back.
Yeah, because they're achieving that. And again, I think it's because annually we're seeing it increase, the project's recovery rates increase. One, because the ordinance has been around for a while now. We're talking 5 years. And a lot of the project managers and the contractors that are here are now in multiple projects within what we call Green Halo. And we call the Green Halo, but what I would like to start doing is part of that rebranding is what I would like to start calling it as sustainable sites. Because a part of the Sustainable Sites program is not only the waste diversion, why we're trying to meet our county ordinance, but sitting back and also being on the construction side of things, being a project manager in my past life also, is a part of being sustainable is also looking at our water resources, looking at our stormwater controls, working with different departments to make our program all-encompassing and more sustainable. So we're going to be calling it sustainable sites, and this encouraging the projects not only to divert as much material that they can, but to also look at what they can do on site to minimize any type of wasting water and stuff like that. So it's a move, and I think it's going to only make the program that much stronger. Any questions about C&D? We'll talk about what that all means. And again, on the carbon footprint and the sustainability report that we printed off, look at that, almost 65,000 barrels of oil saved through the C&D program, over 3 million gallons of gasoline saved, and then over 715,939 tree CO2 processing
It's very
equivalent.
specific.
Yeah, right.
Like that 0.23
just the branch. Yeah, but it just shows you the impact that this program has and what this is doing to the overall, carbon footprint for the community or the area. And this is just fantastic numbers, fantastic news all the way around.
Kudos to Aspen. They adopted a very similar program. So
Yeah.
you see that.
And we're still working hand in hand with them on these efforts to really help them along to get theirs initiated. So
What about Snowmass Village?
They keep talking. Brian Pettit called and said, hey, they want to set up a meeting and go over your C&D, but I haven't heard from them yet.
Let us know.
definitely.
Yeah, that's the next focus. Aspen's a big contributor. Snowmass is probably second to Aspen.
We can, we know the council out there, and it'd be worth a call to the new mayor.
Yeah,
So we can get him on board.
any support would be helpful.
We know the city manager out there too, John. He likes nachos and football games.
Hey,
What do you, I have two questions. Will we wrap this up in 9 minutes?
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't
we're
know how
done.
much
We're
we
done.
have.
Yeah,
Okay.
we are.
And, okay,
Thank
great.
you.
And, okay. Just want to manage time. And then I also wondered, like, if you have a local government that comes to you and says, we don't know anything about this, but, what's the hardest thing about doing it?
The C&D?
Yeah.
Getting the partnership with the permit ComDev department. We were lucky. Our ComDev came to us and said, hey, we're redoing some code. Now's the time. And it's just City of Aspen ran into kind of some walls of like, oh, it's too hard. It's too much work. And then once they the Green Halo software is key.
Yeah.
So once you get that implemented, it does all the tracking for you.
Yeah, I cannot stress enough the importance that community development, how their assistance with this program makes it that much better. I gave a presentation last year to national presentation, and I focused a little bit on the ordinance, but what I talked about was the effective communication between the solid waste group and the permitting group, because without they're the key to making this work. It's initiated during the permitting process and it ends at the permitting process. We're all work together. The coordination has to be just perfect, and they're just great partners to be with. So again, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest key, is getting that partnership and that communication.
And then how has the response from the development community evolved from the beginning to?
When you introduce things like this, you're always expecting a lot of pushback and, oh, we can't do it. Aspen had a little bit of that, but it's the same contractors. So we did our initial stakeholder meetings before we kicked it off. And we heard from a lot of them that said, we are so tired of tearing down 10-year-old houses. We're so happy to see this.
Yeah.
And there are some companies, Stutzman Gerbaz, Brycor, have really dialed it in. They use it as a marketing tool, and they get business from it. So,
Wow.
I was at city council meeting, and a developer came up, our contractor came up, and he said, because theirs is a little different than ours, and he said, can you please make it match Pitkin counties? Because we already know it. So it's not that
Makes
much
sense.
different.
Yeah, I have received very little to none negative feedback on the program. Again, it's 5 years in. A lot of the contractors are the same. Project managers, a lot of the time they might change a little bit, but they're still around doing it. But yeah, very little pushback on it.
And who else is doing this?
Gerbaz,
Yeah.
they save money because if you divert concrete, it's all cheaper than trash.
Yeah.
So they save money for their clients in the long run.
Who else is doing this around the state?
Boulder just adopted it. Longmont?
Loveland.
Loveland went with
yes.
Green Halo.
Yeah, they went
so-
with Green Halo. I talked with them quite a bit. Yeah, Loveland. Yeah, not too many.
Yeah, it's gaining traction. Fort Collins, I believe, is getting there.
Okay, interesting. Greg, go ahead.
How's the multilingual outreach? How's the outreach? Because there's so many in the contracting and construction community are Latino, Spanish.
Yeah, that's an important factor in our outreach and education. For the Green Halo in particular, we created several videos, informational videos.
Starring Rosa.
Yes, yeah. Fantastic.
What's
Yeah.
Green Halo in Spanish?
Green Halo. It's a company name.
Yeah, fantastic.
Verde something.
Verde something.
Yeah, and the informational videos walk the contractors through the Green Halo process, and that's both done in English and Spanish. And we've received really, really good, favorable response from the use of those videos, because all they have to do now in their meetings or their safety meetings or their initial talks each week with their contractors and workers, they put the video on, and it walks people through what the expectations are for the Green Halo project. It's been really, really good.
Great. Patty, go ahead.
Two real quick. Mattress program. How much does it cost for, is it one mattress, one box spring you pay to cost if you bring it out to the landfill?
Yeah, so mattress alone we raised it a little bit to cover costs, is $35 to dispose of the mattress for
Right,
recycling.
right.
If you bring it with the box spring, it's $40.
Okay, I brought this up the last time we talked about this. I would like to see us, the hardest part I think for most people is getting it to the landfill. So can we speak with the city when they do their trash, quote unquote, pickup, to see if we can't hook into that, and in some way people have to sign up ahead of time for mattress or box spring pickup and pay a minimal fee maybe for both? And maybe because then we could have a truck come by, pick them up, and because it's at the perfect time is when people are moving on, or seasonal workers, and that's when we get a lot of stuff dumped in our recycling bins or on the sides of highways. They just let them flat out of the back of their trucks. So if we could maybe see if we can work something out, I think it'd be a great way to educate the public, but also to provide a service. The other one is the plastic film program is kind of new education, and we And the city has a drop-off. Do we have one in our building?
No, but that was my, that's a plan, so.
Yeah, and maybe put them in our kitchenettes too, and because I have, bread bags that I reuse, but I also bring my lunch in them here, and then I'm like, do I take the peanut butter smeared bread bag home? You throw it in the trash because you can't throw it in recycling. So maybe if we can do some up the education on that. I think it's great. We'll get that highway built for you, made out of plastic film, which I think is pretty cool. But I think a public education would be great.
Yeah, we're ramping that up for
Great,
sure.
perfect. Thank you.
I wanted to make sure it worked first before I.
Yeah. I think we should throw it out there. And the mattressing, I think, would be great for the people that, they just leave them places. You see them
That's
everywhere
a really good point. Yeah.
because they don't fit in a Subaru.
Nope. I understand, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Kelly.
Okay.
Final thoughts for
Do
Kathy
a
and
service
Cameron?
mark lookup on sustainable sites before you get into a fight with the U.S. Green Building Council.
Oh. Yeah, there
So
you
it's
go.
Pitkin Sustainable Sites, which is a horrible acronym, but
Yeah, Pitkin County Sustainable Sites. Yeah.
otherwise U.S. Green Building Council has
Might
that.
have to something to say.
Yeah, sorry.
Make sure I add that Pitkin County to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good news.
Minor, but
Thank you. Oh, it's always important.
All right, thank you so much. So will this come back to us at all to like an informal resolution to adopt your goals?
I just
or,
meant
okay,
mostly informational.
Okay.
If you have comments, "Oh, I hate that, take it out, or add this, we'll incorporate it.
Thanks.
so. Yeah.
The thing that was different is your numbers changed from what I got in my printed version from what you showed me.
Yeah, we updated. I did
I
on the
know.
presentation, so
I read
my
'em.
apologies.
This morning I read 'em again.
Good for you.
Thank
My
you.
apologies. All right.
Thanks, appreciate it. Nice to see you guys.
Thanks.
thank you.
Kathy,
Nice
good luck
meet
to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, congrats. and
Do you
good luck.
ice skate? Do they ice skate in Minnesota?
I think a lot of things are frozen there. So yeah. Curling. I'm looking forward to getting.
Bye,
into
Kathy.
curling.
It
really would be
much
fun.
for everything you've done for the county and everybody who lives in the county. It's amazing.
Yeah. Thanks, Francie. Thanks all.
Take care.
I'll be back. I'll be back
But you'll be back.
for a visit.
Can I come out Liz as well?
You can if you want. Just in case she wants to correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay. We are moving on from our waste diversion plan to discuss some changes to property tax law that have occurred in the state of Colorado over the last year in the last legislative session. And this will be helpful for us all to understand more clearly if you guys have sorted it out, because there was a lot of conflicting interaction between these two laws and other things happening at the legislature. So I will turn it over to Ann, who is our CFAO and public trustee. And
It
I'm
was
sort of forgetting
confusing
something
reading
else.
it.
Are you confused?
Yeah, I have arrows going up or down or over.
Hi,
All right,
welcome.
Thank you. I understand during a legislative update that Levi had provided a few weeks ago that he wanted to learn more about the legislation that has affected property tax revenues for governments in Colorado that happened during, more specifically, last year. And so just to give you a little bit of background, in 2022, Senate Bill 238 provided for reductions in property tax assessed values. That was the first thing that kind of happened in this theme. In 2023, Senate Bill 303 put Prop HH on the ballot, which attempted to provide further reductions to assessed values and implement a new revenue limit. As you know, the voters did not approve Prop HH, and so during a special session, Senate Bill 23B001 was then passed, and that made changes to the assessed values, but it did not implement a revenue restriction. So fast forward to 2024, Senate Bill 233 was passed into law, and that continued the assessed value changes of the previous bills, but then included a new property tax revenue limit. This bill applied only to 2025, which, as you know, the amount of property tax increases in a non-assessment year is not going to be affected by any revenue limits. However, at the end of 2024 in a special session, this was modified to extend for changes into future budget years starting in 2026. So this means that there's a new revenue limit applied to local governments for starting budget year 2026. And as a reminder, that's property taxes for 2025 that are collected in 2026. Any questions on the history? If you don't like any of it, these all came from DOLA, so.
I'm just, if I could,
Go ahead, Greg. Yes, please.
I'm still not familiar enough with the way things work there. That is this kind of a typical progression of how something gets modified in little bits and pieces? It seems like trying to sneak it in under the barn door sort of thing to me.
They do that down there.
They do that
Yeah.
down there. I
I
know.
mean,
is this typical?
Yeah, oftentimes policy decisions are made in an incremental fashion. I think what you're seeing here is really the result of unexpected value changes following COVID and the state trying to react to those and balance different interests that were at the table. And so it has been unusual in terms of playing with the assessed valuation rate. If you look at it over a 20-year period, absolutely. There's been more activity on this in the last 5 years, 4 or 5 years, than probably the previous 15 or 20 combined. So that's unusual. But in terms of the process, I think given some of the uncertainty and the various interests and taxing districts that are impacted by these decisions, it's not surprising it's been incremental.
Great, thanks.
But that's speculation.
That was kind of my perspective, that it just seemed like it's churning more. Thanks.
And as you go through this, can I just ask, will you help us understand what we're doing now in tax collection from 2020, what was affected in 2024, and then what we should keep in mind for 2026 budget moving forward?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this new local government revenue limit is the focus, thanks, Connie, of our presentation here today. There are many different things that have affected different parts of local government that have come out of these bills. The assessor is one that has had a lot of changes, and there's reporting that the treasurer has to do and so on. But it's this new local government revenue limit that I think is most impactful, at least to the finances of our organization, and that's where we want to spend our time today. So this House Bill 24B 1001 modified the property tax limit for local governments, basically placing a 5.25% revenue limit times the number of years in the current assessment cycle, and we have a 2-year assessment cycle. So every 2 years, you cannot increase more than 10.5%. That does include a carryover amount. So let's say in the first year you only increased 4%, then you would have 1.25% to carry forward to the next year to add to your 5.25%. So there's complicated calculations that have to be done. And as I mentioned earlier, this starts in property tax year 2025, which means our budget year in 2026 would be impacted. The revenues will be impacted, potentially. So it does exclude certain entities from this property tax limit, school districts and home rule towns, cities, and city counties, but not home rule counties, of which we are one. in the first, before the special session, or I think in the first draft of the bill in the special session, home rule counties were included, and then they were struck in the final iteration of the bill. So also excluded from this new property tax limit are entities subject to the 5.5% revenue limitation and entities already subject to TABOR. So for instance, our general fund is already subject to TABOR and 5.5% revenue limitation, and so this new limit would not apply to it.
Do you mind if I ask you a question, or do you
Sure.
prefer you
No,
go
no,
through
please.
the presentation? Okay. How is the assessor going to suss out the difference between school districts and home rule town cities?
Since
I-
they overlap.
Right.
Yes, I hear it's quite problematic. They're going to have big software changes. Yeah.
Okay. And that's, well, I just want to think through that a little bit more. So that's, I mean, the assessed value, they're going to assess these properties the same way they always assess the properties. It's just however they calculate the value that we then build revenue off of is what's
Correct,
different.
yeah.
Okay.
So, the assessor deals with, assessing the values, deducting any, deductions that are ordered by the law, and then breaking them out into different classifications, now including school districts. Then they give a big number to us and say, this is your assessed value. And then we do the calculations applying these revenue limitations to that number.
So this is going to really be on your end, the treasurer's end, to manage that.
And the budget, finance, property tax limits. And that will require us to calculate the mill levies, which then are given to the treasurer to then issue the bills, property tax bills. So Picken County funds are impacted, not all of them, but some of them are. As I mentioned, there are already some existing revenue restrictions, TABOR and 5.5%, and also our Home Rule Charter that apply to our core services and a few others. But these are the funds that would be have the new revenue limit applied to. So the ambulance district, healthy community, the new affordable housing property tax fund, open space and trails, and Redstone Ranch Acres. All of these are relatively new taxes, and so the language was written in such a way that there was a rate restriction, but this new bill places this revenue restriction on all of these that don't already have one. Just as an example, as you know, open space and trails, last year they had an almost 50% increase in property tax revenues because of the increase in assessed values. And it was determined by this board and the Open Space and Trails Board to collect that full amount. If this revenue limit had been in place at that time, you would not have been able to collect more than 5.25. So, for example, the Snowmass Falls Ranch acquisition would have been unlikely to go ahead.
And so that's what we're looking at in 2026.
Correct.
So,
Go ahead, Patty.
so even if the voters approved not limiting, this overrides our voters? They can't do that.
Maybe
just
we want to
did.
have legal look at it, but yeah.
I think to me, if our voters approves, that's kind of overstepping the bounds of the state for what our voters decided they want or don't want.
Yeah.
I'm offended as a voter.
Yeah. So what the state
Greg,
says
sorry.
is that in order to waive this limit, you have to go back for voter approval. And you can do it either for a single year, specified years, or all future years. And there's a specific ballot title language that you have to use.
And think we should find out legal, like at the AG level, and say, can they override our voters, and then say, well, you can go back to your voters again. Well, why are you putting us through that extra hoop at an expense to our voters again?
Good question.
Greg?
Yeah,
you
I
had a
was just
question?
thinking, how many home rule counties are there? Just two, correct? So
Correct.
it's Weld and us. Did Weld want this, or, you know, I would just like to know why those two were
They
singled out.
picked on all 2 home rule charter counties.
Right, why did they, where was the wisdom in that? They thought it would be easy because we can't fight it, or what? Is it
Who
because we
knows?
have a high tax?
I don't know. I think that what's interesting here is there's not a universal county experience to draw from with this, because many counties are not DeBruced. So they are already functioning under Tabor, and this will not apply. They will have the other limitations already imposed upon them.
Kind of already
So-
where this would get
Yeah,
them.
so I don't know what the universe of like this many counties aren't gonna be impacted because they already have their restrictions that they've never been able to get out from under. And then you have counties that, like ours, who have some funds and some funds not. And then you have some counties who their general fund is totally debruced. And then you have home rule counties, which could be anywhere in that pot of it. So I think that there was just I don't think Weld was advocating to be excluded necessarily. And they just threw everybody in it.
Be interesting
Just
to
fight that.
poll the state legislature and find out if any of them understand this. And the impacts, and I bet how many of them even know there's only 2 home rule charter counties in the state. Yeah, it's interesting, but I think it's definitely looking at legal to see if it is or if it isn't.
So I will punt to Rai if you would like. Okay.
I think so. Do we give it?
Yeah.
Anne? Yes, thank you.
So I think that's all I
I have to
had.
imagine there's
Legal.
chatter, because there was some ballot, just like we did the housing ballot in November, there were other counties that did debrucing measures in November that are gonna be pissed if they have to go back out.
Yeah, because they got to go back out again.
Maybe there's an opportunity for
That's
a
not always an easy sell.
legislative push if legals doesn't provide.
Interesting.
As far as budget impacts go, I was looking at open space and ambulance. Those were the two that
Right.
concerned me most. And when we project in the 5-year plan going forward, we normally don't project more than a 5% increase every other year, so in the assessment years anyway, as we're looking forward, because we don't want to over-project what that growth might be.
Right.
So as far as our future planning goes, this doesn't have a big impact. It would be about the same. What happens in the actual property values, of course, as you know, is that can definitely be higher than this limitation. But looking back in open space and trails over the last 10 years or so, I think really only 2024 would there have been a significant impact.
Because of snowmass.
Because most years, it's just not a whole lot more than, say, that 10%, if we can take that 10% in 2 years. So the impact is not always that great, but it is concerning when a fund like open space counts on being able to keep up with property values in order to make a significant purchase like we did with Snowmass Falls.
Thank you. Do you have questions, Jen?
Interesting.
All makes sense. You're a tax expert.
I just,
Because, I'm on this tax committee because there's home rule, they have a home rule seat, and I was like, there's no way Weld is sitting on that. Picken has to represent here.
well, and what's the end gain here for the state? I mean, it was my understanding they were looking at things to help the taxpayers, but are they? Is this?
Well, if the
making it that
taxpayer
much
themselves
better?
have chosen to actually remove a revenue restriction, then you would think that they would be allowed to do that.
Yeah. I don't see a great net gain for the world on this. Actually, I just see it as becoming more complicated, more complex, and more potential for impacts, negative impacts.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So I did include at the back of the packet
I know all the-
online a list of all the kind of, all the funds that we have, and then all the revenue restrictions that we already calculate for each of our funds. So this would add another one. So just as to your point, it makes it more and more complicated, but
Yeah.
you should see some of the spreadsheets we have.
Interesting. Thanks. For really confusing. Good job.
I'll let you know what we hear from Ray.
Yeah. And if we need to contact the AG's office, we'd be more than happy to do so.
Yeah, I haven't paid a ton of attention yet here early in this legislative session, and I suppose I'll hear more.
Anything coming back? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was some of the chatter I've heard is relative to like backfill for fire districts. Allow portability of like senior exemption and homestead exemption. What else? I'm drawing like more funding and flexibility in the state. I forget the name of the fund. The fund that allows people essentially to defer
Oh, yeah.
tax payment that the
Homestead, or
state
is
then
it the homestead?
backfills. Those are the areas of conversation that I've heard come up relative to this.
Okay. Glad you're paying attention.
A little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
That was like the clearest explanation we've got. So
Yeah,
I
it was
really
great
appreciate
information, actually.
Okay. We have a scheduled break. Does anyone want to take a break, or should we move on to,
We do something easy like agendas, maybe?
prep? Yeah, should we talk about something until 2:30 and then take a break at 2:30?
Yeah.
Okay. How about we do future agendas?
I love catching John off guard.
I know. Well, I can open this up by saying I have not fulfilled my expectations of myself as chair in
I think you've been doing a fine job.
cultivating a good plan for our joint meeting with the city. I don't know. I don't think Tori and I all had a lot of whole great ideas, nor do I have a clear direction on where the city wants to go, and if it aligns with what we offered. So I don't know if you've heard more, because they were going to talk about it yesterday.
So Tori caught me
Today.
at the chamber meeting this morning on my way out, and he was going to send a follow-up email. I haven't received that yet. I'll reach out to Sarah. At the last conversation this board had was around 3 topics for the agenda: doing the homeless strategic plan update. Patty, you got to see a little bit of that today at the ACRA board meeting. Again, I guess.
Yeah, but I felt that, I think the city's looking for more depth rather than just time frame.
Yeah.
What the presentation was today, here's what we're doing, here's where we're going, here's our time frame. I think the city wants more data.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily have that data yet.
We don't have that data. We're still in the process of
So it'd just be a
collecting it.
quick, this
Yeah.
is what the plan is, we'll be back.
Yeah. The other thing that we had talked about having on the agenda was an update on airport project timing and a particular focus on the RAISE grant, which we'll be talking about in open discussion. And that's something that we're prepared to do. And then maybe having a presentation on the results of the 82 survey, the entrance to Aspen survey that the city recently completed. Tori had indicated that maybe there wasn't as much interest in the update on the homeless conversation. Maybe you and
We
he
could
had
do
a
a quick
conversation.
version of what we saw this morning, this is the time frame. This is what we're doing here, here, and here. And when we get the data collected and then we'll be back with a broader presentation.
Yeah, and apparently they had a conversation last night and wanted to talk about wildfire and WUI and those sorts of things. I have a concern that if the expectation is that we're doing a presentation, I don't know that we have time to really put good information together on that short
And
of
we need the
notice.
fire department's input.
Yeah, and we could see if
the
Angie
forest.
Davlin from the coalition might be available, but it's fairly short notice. It's next
Yeah.
week.
think we should
And
do
so
that in the
robust
spring.
conversation. And so we came to no conclusions either, Kelly. I'm sorry. I just wanted to report out on the conversations.
Yeah.
Tori was either going to reach out either to you or to
Okay.
me through Sarah, I think.
Okay.
And I'll double check again. I just hadn't seen anything.
I just wanted
Yes.
I was just thinking, with their election coming up, I almost wonder, is there a point to having a meeting with them before their election? Because, or we could either have the meeting and invite all the candidates to attend, because the people who are making the decisions going forward are going to be different from the ones that are sitting there now. And are the ones that are campaigning going to stick their neck out in any way until after the election? My guess is not. And so I'm wondering if it's worth it. Maybe we just tell them to cancel it until, just a thought. Maybe there's something there that could happen in the meantime, but it doesn't sound like there's a lot of substance there. I'm not too worked up over this. Thoughts?
I mean, I continue to think that hopefully the candidates are paying attention to whether or not they attend, but I mean, I continue to think that having conversations with them about the homelessness efforts just
We could certainly
demonstrates to
publicize it.
them that we continue to think this is important for them to be paying attention to.
Yeah,
I
but
think
that's
the
more us
airport
than
project
them.
timing is irrelevant to the election and would, as are the Highway 82 updates. These are all things coming from us to them, which is fine. I don't know if there's anything they care to share with us in the other
Doesn't
opposite
sound like it.
flow. I suppose they've been, I don't know, they're hosting, we're presenting to them, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think that's fine. I don't know if there's other topics we want to handle just with the very quickly changing dynamic at the federal level relative to
Funding.
federal funding for things, as well as immigration policy. If there's any interest in trying to align with them or have a conversation about where we have alignment or where we don't. Yeah.
I think if we could have maybe a broader discussion on homeless than we heard this morning. She didn't have much time. If we had a little more time, we could get into some of the more the number, because maybe it's because I'd heard the time frame before, but there wasn't any meat to it. It was just, this is the plan for the survey, this is the plan for our process, this is who we are. I think the city wants more meat.
I wonder though if that's better served as we get a little bit more into the
That's what I'm
process.
saying.
Yeah.
But, and the wildfire, so you know, after you left, the director's comments at the ALCRA meeting, almost everybody was talking about hardening structures, building codes, which thankfully we are up on because of Jeffrey's participation at the state level with building codes. People were like, oh. But that almost every person at the table was like, and what about California, and how do we do evacuation planning? And that's a whole meeting with the fire department there, with the first responders in the room, the emergency management coalition, or what is it called?
The Wildfire
Wildfire.
Coalition?
No,
or
the other one with our emergency responders.
Oh, the Public Safety Council?
Public safety, that's the kind of discussion I think we need to have, but I don't think we can get it all together.
Well,
by
I think we
Monday.
can tee that up for,
Next time.
for a spring meeting, and if we want to like compare codes, what's your wildfire code say? What does our wildfire code
And
say?
Jeffrey, where will your process be by spring?
Final draft.
So that would be helpful
For
too.
adoption by the legislature.
Yeah, so that'll be even better to have that done, but, yeah.
You know, it'd be nice to have someone who can speak on with historical perspective regarding fire. If you look at pictures from even the 1970s, as late as recently as the 70s here, you'll see a valley in a town that has far fewer fully mature trees. You know, there are pictures I remember taken out on Cemetery Lane when it was nothing. Like when Pat Bingham lived there, when as a kid, there weren't any. It was full, had been a potato field. Everything that's grown has grown since then, and so it's unprecedented the amount of tall foliage growth that we have on Red Mountain. Red Mountain was bare or denuded. Smuggler was denuded. You know, back in after the mining days, everything was gone. Like they took everything. They took all the timber that could be made into mine props. So it's all grown back since. So it hasn't always been like this, and it's easy to forget that. You know, and I'm just wondering, do we think about it in that way? It's like maybe there's a reason we haven't had a devastating fire, is because we just didn't have the fuels, but now we do, and it just seems like that might be helpful because every tree is precious, right? You cut a tree down and you get in trouble for it, but you know, maybe we need to do more trimming around here. We're kind of looking scruffy.
I'm going to suggest that for the next joint meeting, we can put together, I think, a very comprehensive discussion around wildfire.
Yeah,
for
historical
us to
perspective
have.
is what I'm asking for, just because somebody would, you know, who could provide historical context.
And then for this meeting, I'll offer to Tori that we'll be prepared to, you know, present the homelessness strategic plan, our airport project timing. I think we can ask them what they're thinking about appointing someone back to the AAB. They're going to have some feedback for us on that. And then
that's right.
We filled the meeting up
planned
already.
improvements on Highway 82, if that works
The
for
safety
everybody.
improvements like
That
Smith
sufficient?
Hill.
Do you mean the raise grant?
Yeah,
or-
well, and I think the overall project, airport project timing.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
when are we
yeah, yeah,
moving
yeah,
into
yeah.
a community
Sorry.
design
I see.
phase and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
No, we don't need.
So I think those are three things for us to say. We're prepared to bring this to you, and if there's anything you want to share with us, we're ready to hear it.
And what I would say, oh,
But
sorry.
no, I thought we were gonna do safety, like Smith
Highway
Hill.
82,
Is that
yeah.
part of that? Okay.
What I would suggest is if it feels like the response is we're not really ready to have those discussions before we have the others, you know, maybe it is do we wait till after the election kind of. But if they're open to doing those, then we can move forward.
The other thing too, there's no end time on the agenda for the meeting. It only says it
4 to
starts at
6,
4. It doesn't say, so could we add 6 to the agenda so we have an end time?
I'll call Tori when we're done here, and we'll get those.
4:30.
Okay.
I have a few things. We are trying to get EOTC meetings on the calendar this year. We have heard back from Snowmass that they're willing to do this, but we have Thursday, April 24th, Thursday, July 24th, and Thursday, October 23rd. As
I have
potential
no idea
dates.
what's happening in April, July.
Understood. I just wanted to see if there are any issues or any concerns with us trying to establish dates right now for those meetings.
The biggest thing, Kelly, I have
Dates
is
again.
that we need commitments.
Mhm.
We fail, 'cause people agree, it's hard to say what I'm doing in August. I don't know.
What
But
are the
at
dates?
least if we can get 3 people from each board or council, that I think is important.
Now, another concept we had talked about, and I think based on how the EOTC, especially the last ones went, we want to have at least a regular schedule for updates and such. But we had also talked about potentially the county or one of the entities taking lead on just a more general conversation. Our EOTC conversations tend to be just related to transit. It seems like there's a lot of energy around other kinds of issues. You know,
Right.
how are we talking about affordable housing and how those relate to transit? How are we talking about, you know, other maybe things like federal grants getting delayed and those sorts of things and how we're responding? and maybe having a more general gathering, not under the EOTC umbrella, but maybe getting dinner together and breaking bread and having these broader conversations. And that may be something we want to put back out on the table in relation to these two, because it feels like there's energy for lots of other conversations and
Right.
not an
Working
underpass or
group. Yeah.
yeah.
It seems like the
Free fare.
conversation about structure, sorry,
Go ahead, no, go
just
ahead.
about structure for EOTC. You know, if you need a consensus to do everything, it's easily sabotaged, as we saw. I don't know if that was intentional, but it was effectively a sabotage of the entire thing. You know, so if we continue to do that, there's no point even meeting. But I love the idea of the working groups, and I love the idea of, as Patty suggests, of sending, you know, proxies or, you know, 2 or 3 people from each, so we can actually get a quorum to get something done. Do we have to have a vote to change that, a vote of the citizenry? But right now, it's a dysfunctional, useless organization. I could just say that.
There's a lot of
experience.
there's a lot of flexibility within the IGA. Although to change the voting structure the way you're talking about, I think we'd have to all amend the IGA, so there'd have to be a formal action.
You have to have
from
at
each
least
board.
one vote of everyone, of the entire everyone. But it wouldn't be a public vote. It would just be the vote of.
I think it would just, we need to go back and look, but I believe
It
it'd
would
just
be
be
a public
amending
vote.
the
The
IGA.
public vote just established that we're gonna have an EOTC based on the tax.
If we could just all get together once, we could fix it if we chose to. Just to make it so it works a little better, because it just
We'd have
doesn't
to
seem functional
amend
to
the
me.
IGA.
Why don't we propose that?
Well, I think we need to have the discussion to decide if anybody wants to amend the IGA. I'm not just gonna amend it, come in and say we're amending it without,
We can do that at one of the EOTC meetings, for example, yeah.
and bring it back, because it can come back to each jurisdiction individually for approval of an IGA. Just, we have to make
Right,
the
you'd have to go
decision
through
to
that.
do it.
Francie's
As a
good.
group.
I see it. Francie, go ahead. We can't hear you. Unmute.
Yeah, thank you. I am wondering if we figured out exactly what the quorum requirements are, because I think everybody was under the assumption that we had to have all the members there in order to meet and have a quorum. And then at the last meeting, I forget who it was, said, and Brian maybe, no, you don't need everybody there to have a quorum, but I think that has affected some of the reliability of our meeting times. So it would help if we could get that really clear, like, how many people do we actually need to have there? Do we just need a quorum from each jurisdiction and then have each jurisdiction there, or how does that happen?
So Francie, it's a quorum of each jurisdiction. Each jurisdiction needs to be able to act independently at those meetings. But as long as there's a quorum from each jurisdiction, the meeting can move forward. It's when we lose,
People from each jurisdiction.
yeah, 3 from each. And so it's when we've lost a quorum from any one of the jurisdictions that we can't move forward.
Okay.
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 Do we want to schedule just some internal work time relative to our concerns about EOTC? You know, as a
Happy to.
proposal for the EOTC group, like, we think these things are not functioning well as a Picken County
think it would
board.
hurt.
And this is what we think the EOTC should take up as group work.
I don't think it would hurt, and I also think what would really be helpful, as part of that discussion, is if this board was to say, we are gonna commit to at least 3 of us being at scheduled EOTC meetings. We fail to have a commitment to doing that, and it's kind of, I don't need to go, and I don't need to go, or.
Well, July is Patty and my birthday, so
Yeah.
you all have to go.
Well, we'll be watching from the comfort of the lounge at the W.
John, what was your October date? Sorry, you had April 24, July 24, and October.
23rd.
Thank you.
Just to throw you off of the 23rd.
Those are tentative. So if you can tell me what you're doing on October 23rd, Jeffrey,
I'm
I
going
will
to
be
be at an
extremely impressed.
EOTC meeting, Patty. I'm going to be at an EOTC meeting.
Oh, good for you, John.
You may be leaving
You
for
don't count.
vacation right promptly thereafter. Okay, John, do you have other?
Yeah, just
future agenda?
a
Go
quick,
ahead.
Eagle County confirmed they'll be able to join us for lunch on April 22nd, so they'll be up here at noon, so we'll go ahead and get lunch ordered, for that.
April
and-
22nd?
Correct. Yep, you'll have lots of joint meetings that week potentially. And then we have a Healthy Rivers and Streams joint meeting with the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board and outside council set for March 18th from 9:30 to noon, and we have a prep meeting scheduled for March 11th.
Who's outside counsel?
That's the
Water.
attorneys that were hired, the water attorneys.
Oh, the water attorneys,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And then
Wait, March 11th? 9 to something?
prep is scheduled March 11th. The joint meeting is March 18th from 9:30 to noon. Sorry. I'm unusually talking fast, maybe. That's,
Are we skipping break?
I just have one more thing if you want to let
No.
me do it.
Yeah, go
We'll
for it.
Take
Yeah,
a
go
quick
ahead.
break. You all should have a letter from Sam in front of you. We are finally gonna have a ribbon cutting on the Financial Empowerment Center down in Glenwood. That will be on Thursday. What's that?
What's the ribbon?
The Financial Empowerment Center, something that we had talked about, gosh, I think it's going back almost a year ago now, that it may even be more, the board had
Barbara?
appropriated some funds to this. But it will be on Thursday, March 13th from 4 to 6. If any board members are
We
interested.
gotta have note, we gotta invite, formal invite.
Yeah, and you've got to invite Francie. I don't know if it went to you by email. I think it did.
Well, I would like to represent the board at that, if
Good,
anyone,
great.
there's no objection.
Let's just
You
notice it.
should.
That's all I have for future agendas.
Any other comments on future agendas?
I may be imprisoned in Washington DC on that date after being in DC at the NACO meeting. The federal penitentiary, so,
Or deported.
or deported. Oh, back to Scotland.
Yeah. Birthright citizenship's out. You're.
Yeah, I don't count
come-
anymore.
Don't even try to come back.
It is curious.
Yeah.
Let's see, I don't have anything. I don't have anything else on my notes from you all for future agendas. Are you all seeing everything you hoped to in the meetings scheduled that are forthcoming? Okay. Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. Well, John, you said you probably don't need the full 60 minutes, right? Okay.
Well, that's gonna be up to you guys. I
Okay,
don't think I
let's
do.
take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 2:50 and begin our discussion on our BoCC retreat. Thank you. Thank you, Passers. welcome back, everybody, to the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners work session on Tuesday, January 28th. After just a short break, we are resuming our agenda to discuss preparations for our annual BoCC retreat that will happen in mid-February. And we've had a few conversations about this, but John, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Kelly. And the board retreat is something that we do every year. And the reason that we step into this format is we generally bring you together in two different types of meetings, a work session meeting and a regular meeting. And in each of those formats, we're kind of bringing you items of business as they need to be decided on, and you get a half hour here, an hour there to kind of review policy issues and make decisions and give departments direction and really administer the policy and business of the county in that way. But rarely do you get a chance to just step back and sit with each other for an extended period of time and take a step back and look at the big picture. How did the previous year go? What did we learn?
Anything.
Right? Whoops, I'm sorry. What was that, Francie?
No sound.
No sound. Oh.
Okay.
And we have no tech.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to remember my speech.
We can hear you, period. We are working on it.
I wonder if they came on yet.
Francie, can you hear us now?
Rich.
Yes.
Okay.
Good now.
Look at
Okay,
that. Tech
great.
support. You
Nice
can add
job,
it to
John.
my. I do
All
know how to
right.
hit the mute
We got
button.
everybody
We're gonna
here.
go back a minute.
Are you okay
and
if I start over?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm sorry.
No, Francie,
Thank
that was on us. We didn't have the mute button hit. So I was just saying that the retreat is something that we do once a year because typically we have you in work sessions or regular meetings where we incrementally bring the business of the county to you in kind of hour blocks, and you're making policy decisions and giving administrative direction on those kind of specific and limited questions that staff is bringing in front of you. But rarely do you have a chance to really just step back and look at the bigger picture, to review how did the previous year go? What went well? What would you change if you could? Is there anything we need to learn about our experience from that year we just went through? Time to sit back and talk about what it means to do your jobs effectively, right? And how you do those jobs effectively and what the roles are between elected officials and staff, and how do we partner to get the public's work done both efficiently and effectively. And just to sit back and really look at all the big pieces and how they're fitting together and to give direction. And so sometimes we're in a space where we need to be really creative and looking forward to what new things do we need to be doing for our community. Sometimes we're in a space of we got a lot going on, we got to figure out how to make it happen. That's a space, incidentally, I think we're in right now, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But, when we look at the agenda, I just want you to just kind of consider, is this a use of our time that we otherwise wouldn't necessarily do, in a work session or regular meeting, and is it valuable? So I do have, and I want to emphasize also, this is a draft agenda. And so what I'm hoping to get from you today is not whether the time frames are exactly right or the discussions are exactly right, but whether broadly we're structuring our time together in the right ways, and maybe allow, as we figure out facilitation and flow of the day, maybe some incremental changes in timing and such. But we still have to decide on location. I want to do that at the end. I want to get through the agenda first because it seems to be one of the more difficult discussions that we have here. But we've set aside February 18th and 19th. I right now have the agenda starting at 9 o'clock. That's for continental breakfast, gives you some time to come in, grab some things, get settled into the space. We spend a little bit of time going over the agenda, some ground rules. It's not always the case that I facilitate. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I'm suggesting, because of the project nature that we're going to be talking about, that I'll facilitate. It means I need some special permissions from you as your employee to facilitate and manage the discussion. We'll talk about those things. Really getting into the retreat, and we've done this, y'all are familiar with this exercise of going through what you call kind of plus deltas. So looking back on that previous year together and talking about what we're proud of accomplishing. So we have some celebrations in there. Talking about what could have gone better. What would you change if you could have from last year? And then if there are any key lessons, it's an opportunity to put into context that previous year and to really reflect on the full scope. After taking a break, going into a little bit about just how do we effectively work together as a board, as your relationship in directing staff and those sorts of things. In this portion of the retreat, what I'd suggest, I do some classes for CU every year that covers some of these materials. Kelly, I know you've seen some of that before, but I'd suggest taking some of that material that we use in those trainings and talk about, roles of elected officials, what makes your jobs difficult, understanding kind of board staff roles, and just kind of building that context and having that lead into a discussion around working agreements. And those working agreements would be working agreements for this board with each other, as well as, what our working agreements need to be between staff and the board, and how we move those forward. I budgeted quite a bit of time for that through lunch. That may change a little bit, but roughly from 10:45 to 1:45 with some breaks built in there.
It does seem like a lot to me, but I saw that and I thought maybe it was a typo. You put it in twice, but
How many hours did you say?
it's 3.
10:45 to 2:45, and again, we may move those
1:45.
time frames.
1:45.
I'm sorry, 1:45. Thank you.
Yeah.
The afternoon, then, looking at a panel discussion. We've done these in some past retreats, and I think they've been really effective. I do think it'd be worth having some discussion about what you all would want to see out of a panel discussion, because there's a number of different ways we could go. There are kind of two ideas. I've talked to y'all individually, and there's two ideas I think both have merit and would be valuable. We just need to decide, which way you all want to spend your time. What I had originally suggested for this time was bringing panelists in that could speak to kind of this changing federal environment and policy environment and how we might see that affecting our work over the next one to 4 years or 1 to 2 years, whatever time frame. And looking at, is there anything in our policy platforms and such we'd want to change, and how we want to respond. That would be one course. We did that, frankly, with a change in administrations in the past, which is probably why I was thinking about it that way. But the second day, as you're going to see, and maybe we'll come back to this panel discussion after we review day 2, is I'm really hoping to talk about this portfolio of really big projects that we have coming up over the next 5 years. The airport. How are we going to make decisions around a jail and, justice center, housing,
Landfill.
Yeah, we've got the landfill. We've got the Vision 2050, which, while not in dollar-wise the biggest project, is going to take a lot of community capacity and engagement and innovate on a lot of things. And so, I want to talk about this portfolio and just how big it is for us and the types of decisions that you're going to need, both in terms of resources, whether that comes in the form of ballot questions, people, and such, to pull this all off, and what strategic choices do you want to make. So another option, right, and I'll run through day 2 here in a second, another option would be to structure the panel to kind of inform, provide more context for you. And Kelly, this is, I think, it came out of a discussion you and I had, right, is to inform, maybe we get somebody who's done a major airport redevelopment in to talk about what were their key learnings, how did they get set up, what surprised them, what didn't. Maybe similarly around how, kind of talk about some of those pieces that are more project specific or initiative specific in terms of what you're taking on to inform that. Before you comment on that, let me bring that back, because the second day is really all about what I'm going to call boulders. I think we usually call them big rocks, but trying to really give you a review and an understanding of what we're seeing roughly timeline-wise and resource-wise around how the airport is moving forward over the next 5 years. We have a jail discussion that is still nascent. You haven't made decisions on it, but where does that fit in 5 years with the scope of that? Our affordable housing initiatives, such as they are, what are likely some of the resource needs and scope of those projects? A lot of our climate action, whether it be electrification and microgrid and solar installations, those sorts of things. Talking about our growth management, our Vision 2050, and the amount of kind of time it's going to take this board, right? So you've got all of these, but you're also going to have a lot of competing attention for major policy conversations, code conversations. I think there's going to be a lot of public engagement. There's going to be a lot of disagreement, quite frankly, coming our way as you start to really make changes there. That's going to take political capacity as well as staff capacity. I want to step back and really kind of talk about that whole portfolio of major initiatives. We'll also have some others. We're going to show you the 118 other kind of capital projects and initiatives that are just part of our day-to-day. Like, we're built to do those things. These are big things that are unique, generational in a lot of ways, kind of projects that we're trying to fit in somehow into these next 5 years. So the way the second day is set up is a review of that portfolio, so you understand kind of the scope and what staff is seeing and what each of you are seeing. Going through a little bit of a SWOT exercise. Where, in terms of taking these on, what are our strengths right now? What are the weaknesses? Are there some opportunities we're not, understanding? What are the threats? So starting to kind of really lay out, that kind of, it's a pretty standard SWOT analysis, is really basic strategic planning kind of work, but it kind of sets up a conversation so we understand, gosh, what can we leverage? Where do we need to build capacity? Where do we need to cover our weaknesses? Where do we need to be thinking about threats? Where do we need to be cultivating opportunities? You start to develop strategies for success around those areas. And then really turning to setting those strategies, like, how are we going to pull this stuff off? Or do we need to delay some of it? There's all kinds of strategic choices you can make based on what you see as those strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Time allowing, that could take the whole day, in my opinion, just to have that conversation. That's okay. Time allowing, staff has been starting to look at kind of the values and really look at the strategic plan. We have some recommendations to run by the board for potential revisions on values and future amendments to the strategic plan. Those are delayed from where we wanted them to be this year, but time allowing, we'd like to do that in the retreat. If not, we'll bring that back in a work session format. Hopefully out of there after final reflections by 9:15. So kind of starting 9:15-ish every day, hopefully out at 4:15 every day. These are going to be intense days. So I guess before we go back to the specific questions like about panel discussion, does this generally seem like the right way for us to be spending those 2 days together? And
Feedback for John? Greg?
I kind of feel like I'd like to get to the second day sooner. Those are the big important things that we should be talking about, and I can think of a little bit more to add to that. But I'd love to have the reflection go quickly. The effective governing body conversation, I think, could go more quickly, and we could use that extra time to introduce day 2 sooner. And that's where I am. And the other bit of that, what I don't see in here for the big, on the 2024 in review, there's plenty of great things to congratulate ourselves for, and a lot of wonderful things have happened. What didn't we do, and what does the public seem to be talking about should fit in there, in my opinion. And the first one that comes up, housing, you've got on there, but mobility, transportation, it's not just the entrance to Aspen, it's mobility from maybe Brush Creek to Aspen. Like, that's the conversation that I want to have with EOTC, and we haven't really had. And it's like, maybe it's time to have that conversation, because it would include some of your other big ticket items, because housing is tied to that, and the entrance to Aspen and the airport are tied to that. I'm just wondering, dare we start thinking about something bigger and more comprehensive? That it's kind of scary, because it's a big comprehensive planning exercise, which daunts me.
so I think that's why we have the retreat, right? That's part of you all being able to have that conversation and raise those questions and have more time than an hour in a work session, right? To talk about that. I think in having that conversation, Greg, from staff's perspective, we want to be sure you're really aware of what we're seeing as the scope of work and our ability to do it as it stands now,
Right.
before we add more on. So because what can be done maybe should inform what should be done, right? And so we want to make sure that when you have that conversation, it's in that context before you presuppose taking on the bigger thing, if that makes sense. Are you raising your hand?
Patty?
Yeah, Greg, thank you. I had also written down transportation-related issues, safety, capacity, multimodal, et cetera, because that affects all of those other points, the housing, the airport, all the jail, everything is impacted by how do we get to and from. So I think that would be a good topic. But I think we do need to figure out the working agreements, because if we can't figure out how to work together, we're not going to be able to proceed together to get the huge amount of work we have coming before us. And we need to figure that out. Whereas, why is our job so tough? It's our job. But I don't know how much time. I'd rather really try and. The hardest part for me over all the years is we do working agreements and they don't work.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't work on them. We write them down and then we kind of do what we need to do. And that's a tough one. So I don't know how much time we need to spend on it, but I think we need to do that before, hopefully keeping those working agreements in mind, even though they're not formulated in black and white in front of us, but we've had the discussion before we move into the topics. far as panelists, I think having some outside perspective is great. I don't know who we would invite for all these different issues, because we know a lot about housing and how to build it. The airport, of course, we don't know what we're getting ourselves into there, but it's huge. And we're different here, but I don't know how we'd find speakers to cover those topics on things that we need to know that we don't already know.
And I've only locked down right now, and I hope this is okay, one speaker, because we had to get her scheduled, which is our lobbyist from DC, who I think can speak to either one of those.
And she can give us a perspective on
Right.
how these issues are being looked at funding-wise from DC, because that's where she's based and that's her job.
But I've held off on any others until we had just a discussion what you want to get out of the panel.
Yeah, that's what I'm
So-
thinking. Who else would we? I don't have any suggestions. I'll leave that.
I had brought this up with John, that I personally didn't think we needed to spend a lot of time sort of wrapping our arms around sort of the culture and condition of the county, relative, like we did last year. I think sort of relative to like how people are moving through the county, where the jobs are, what the wealth disparities are. We're going to go through, I think, a bunch of that with Hannah Hunt Muller in a prior work session meeting, or like getting a look ahead from like SKICO, like what is their vision. I had suggested that I thought we'd focus our time on the things that, like in that context, that we know we're working on, that we need help thinking through. And so John brought up the airport. I was thinking if we wanted to bring someone in relative to like a housing trust, or thinking through establishing a
Good
housing
idea.
trust was like another idea. So I don't know if those three people would be enough to fill out a panel, but that's kind of the approach that I proposed to John to bring.
I
to
think
you all.
housing trust, because that's a complex one, and I think something we need to visit. If we're gonna want to do housing, we got to figure out how to fund it.
We are in the process of hiring a consultant to help us with that. I gotta see where we'll be in that process. But if we want to go that more technical route, let me tell you where my head goes and see if it resonates with you all. So Jessica Moynihan, of course, from Cozen O'Connor, can provide a lot of context in different areas, and also just some of the political context of moving the airport project. We have another consultant in Brad Jacobson, who you've seen, who's worked on a lot of big projects and could probably give us a little bit different perspective on what he's seen work and not work in different contexts.
It's good.
On the housing side, I could check with staff to see how ready we are. I think what we are finding is that the idea of a housing trust is more complicated than we thought. I think there's been a lot of learning going on in the state. For example, Summit County was ahead of us in trying to put this together. I think they're learning a lot of the hard lessons right now about what can and can't be done with the housing trust that may be good for us to talk about, because we may have to think about other strategies there. So we could look for somebody there. We could maybe on the transportation side, I'm thinking it's mostly technical kind of people, where we have consultants, getting them outside maybe a box that they've been in to talk more broadly. And do you bring in somebody from the community who has experience with major infrastructure projects of any nature, right? Because that's a lot of what we're talking about here, is whether it's building a jail, whether it's building an airport, whether it's fixing the entrance to Aspen and all the challenges related to that. There's a community side and a project side to that. Do we bring somebody in to just talk about the challenges of building? Is that kind of what we're talking about?
I think Greg's saying we should look at transportation from Brush Creek. We need to look at the whole corridor. Because it's the traffic issues, the transportation issues, be it mass transit or individual, starts valley-wide. And I think we need to take that into perspective, not that we have control over it, but it influences decisions we make up here, what's happening down there. And I think that would be, I don't know who you would bring in as far as infrastructure, somebody who's been in it, like FCI, who's been doing, you know, I don't know who you would think of who has that diversity.
Well, we can work on that. I mean, if
I
that's
just
the direction
wonder-
we want
sorry.
to go.
Is it different from like the learning that happened putting together the
RFPs or any of that?
no, I was thinking like the John Bennett group that worked
Oh.
on mobility. You know, is it like revisiting that and seeing what we don't think is working or what we think there's gaps in the information? Because a lot, I mean, that looked at
That's a
a
huge,
number of
discussion, yeah.
approaches to mobility in the
if we
region
bring somebody in who
or
was
in the
part
Upper
of that,
Valley.
they've pretty much made up their mind. I want somebody who can look at that and look at other, you know, who looks at two sides.
I just don't think we need to rehash, like
Yeah.
recollect the data or reanalyze the data that was based on. You know, whether it's like these conditions are either the same or they're not the same, or
Use
and
it as a framework
the
for the
findings
discussion.
would be different, should be different now. You know, so I'm probing Greg, who isn't listening.
I'm listening, I'm just watching the conversation evolve.
I'm trying,
I
and
see
then Francie, I'll go to you.
And I'm wondering what Jeff is doing.
Yeah. So you don't want to, you're going to chew on that question I posed to you? Okay. We'll go to Francie and then Jeffrey.
I'm not sure where I fit into the course of the conversation.
I can't hear
But
her.
I have just a couple of things.
Thank you.
I want to have conversations that we can actually have some kind of resolution, not a legal resolution, conversation resolution about. I don't want to spend too much time talking about traffic in the Roaring Fork Valley because there just isn't very much we can do about it other than our multimodal transportation hub efforts, and those are, I mean, I believe we should look at the big picture, we should talk to Edward, we should figure out who's gonna come in and help us design it, but I don't think we can come to any kind of resolution at a meeting with the five of us about that. And, so I would like to keep it to the kinds of things that will give us direction for where we wanna go. So, in terms of what conversation for the panelists, I appreciate the idea of Jessica catching us up on what could affect us locally by what's going on nationally. I think that would be helpful and depressing as hell. And I don't know. I think we need to do our working agreements, but I certainly don't think we need to have a portrait of what Pitkin County looks like. We've seen it a lot of times and it's out there all the time. And having just run a campaign last fall, I had a lot of my stuff based on that, so I feel pretty up on that, but I don't know how everybody else feels about that. But there's just a couple of comments mid-conversation here.
Those were helpful. Thank you, Francie. Jeffrey, your very first board retreat with us all. What would you like to do?
He thought we were going skiing.
So I guess
We haven't ruled it out, I guess.
I was trying to go up a level and say, from a transportation perspective, let's speak to an HDR or someone else who's like a transportation engineer. And because we have work sessions to go listen to RAFTA. So I think just getting another RAFTA pitch on electrification, and that would be a waste of time, but just sort of opening the box a little bit. So in my mind, at HDR, they're out of Denver. Jan Gell is like the Cities Are for People guy. I mean, he's just outstanding, and his books are unbelievable.
I'm confused. To do what?
We don't know what
So
HDR is.
Oh, so engineering like transportation engineering
Yeah,
consultants.
but engineering
So-
what?
So, well, let me back up. And I had this briefly with John. I think we have roughly $2 billion in projects in the Upper Valley. So Aspen, Pitkin, and Snowmass, right, in the next 5 years. So that's not a good number, I think, if you're living in the valley. That's incredible pressure on where we live. And so we need, as a board and as a community, when we're meeting with the city of Aspen, to start talking about priorities and what we're going to say no to. And so HDR is just a consultant, transportation, but it was just saying, bring someone else to the table to sort of shake that tree up and say, what do we really need to do? And then how are we successful, as opposed to going to meet with RAFTA in a board retreat.
And I'm not saying meet with RAFTA, but I just don't know how a transportation engineer.
I'm throwing it out there as we had an open discussion on panel and who would we want to
Oh, okay.
meet with. And I think, again, it's the opportunity to go back up a level and not be in the weeds of, we really need to get out of being porta potties at, public transportation in the Mid-Valley, because that's not a rural resort economy, right? That's an EOTC meeting where we didn't execute on anything we said we'd do for $8 million. But this retreat to take it back up a level and bring in more strategic thinking of like, wait, if we're really going to expend $2 billion of public money in 2 municipalities and a county, how does that look like? And I think that's the conversation we need to get to over those 2 days.
So that's outside of transportation.
Yes, it's transportation, it's housing, it's all the capital. I mean, I think John alluded to it. It's the 120 capital projects.
Mm-hmm.
But we only have control over ours, but we get impacted by others.
But again, from a map standpoint, we've got, there's a $400 million project here and a $500 million project here that's going to impact the world we live in for the next 5 years. And we're already seeing that happen.
So Jeffrey,
Yeah.
and this would be bringing somebody in just to kind of give ideas. It's not that they're engineering a solution to present to us. I think that's what
Yeah,
we were
like-
maybe hearing. But it's more to bring, I think, here are some different ways that y'all may want to be thinking as you start to try and solve these problems. Is that?
No, exactly. It's we've worked with Louisville, or we've worked with Lafayette, or we've worked with other towns and cities in Colorado, and here's how we move forward, given the highest priority things we must do, because we've already said that from a tax perspective, we're going to do X over the next 5 years. How is that unfolded in other communities within Colorado? So I'm not saying bring in an engineer per se, but I'm saying let's change the conversation from our day-to-day,
bigger picture.
which is RAFTA and EOTC, and get and kind of put those conversations back in the work session, but take this up a level.
That makes sense. You want me to?
Go ahead, yes.
So it seems to me that what a retreat is about is it's an opportunity to take stock, definitely. It's also an opportunity to find out if our visions align and even figure out what our vision is. Do we really have a clear idea of what we want to do as a board in the next 4 or 5 years? I'd say no. We've got lots of opportunities to do things, but do we really have a vision? Is there a consensus, or even do we share goals? And we're a board that is unique. I was thinking about Jeffrey. He's come from P&Z, where their job is to interpret the code and follow the code. Our job's a little different in that we're discretionary and we're visionary. We're supposed to be the visionaries, right? We're the ones who set policy and help steer the ship. And so I don't think we need to hear about specific projects as much as we need to figure out what our vision is. And I think this is an opportunity to be inspired and charged up and enthusiastic and hopefully start pushing all in the same direction. And I think we do that pretty well. I'm not criticizing us. I'm just saying I think that's what retreats are for, and it's also what our board's about, right? We don't get down in the ditches and do the digging. We set the policy on, why do we need a ditch in the first place, and then let somebody else figure out where to put it and how to dig it. So to me, it's a high level, as Jeffrey says, kind of a visionary opportunity. So if we could have a transportation or a consultant who does comprehensive community planning come in and talk about, well, hey, we always talk about our community of 18,000, but really we're a community of 118,000. How are we going to go forward with that in mind, and how does that inform our decision making and our aspirations? That's what I look for in a retreat. I want to come out feeling as if we kind of speak the same language and share visions on where we're going, and not get stuck in the weeds on, as you've said, the specific projects. And I think that's what I heard people saying, but and that resonates for me. I kind of want to come out of this charged up and ready to, push toward that vision over the horizon, really, that we're aiming for. and maybe that'll help us decide where to put the jail and how to do the multimodal and how we can help solve this entrance to Aspen. Maybe we have to go back and look at it from that far back with people from far, far away from here who aren't up to their knees in it already. So a Dutch planning consultant. I wasn't thinking of Edward in particular, but Edward would be
Yeah,
somebody
okay.
I'd bring.
I'm thinking
But
of
I'm thinking
Edward in
like somebody who does planning in another place that might have an innovative ideas that we could inspire us.
Patty,
Does that
Well,
help?
I think the problem we have before us is that we have projects before us. We've already made decisions. We have an airport we're gonna do. We have a jail, we haven't decided where it's gonna be. It's in progress. We have a landfill that's already gotten approvals. That's a project that's gonna be done. So it's not like we're gonna have to be creative or visionary or philosophical. We have to figure out how we're gonna get these projects done that are already before us. And that's a big move for our staff, because if we're gonna do them, we gotta have staff, we gotta have funding, and we don't have that capacity now. So we might have to talk about how, I would love to spend 2 days coming out feeling creative and philosophical and have this grandiose vision. But right now, we have before us projects that need to get done. They've been voter approved. We're in the process of moving them forward. It's how are we going to then fulfill that which we've already got public consensus on to get done. And I think and I don't think having a bigger vision and we can all have consensus and, all that kumbaya stuff is a bad idea. It's just now for 2025, these things are in front of us. And we need to figure out and give staff direction on how we're gonna move them forward. And I think that, for me, is a priority in this retreat.
I was thinking we didn't need a retreat. You've already figured all that out.
I haven't figured it out. I didn't say that, Greg,
This
please.
is the dynamic we're going to work on, hopefully, in working agreements. I'm going to jump in here. If, John, you would like to quickly respond, and then I'm going to go to Frank.
Yeah, here's the good news. Both are true, right? Because if you look at what we have teed up, you all have like 4 or 5 generational projects in front of you. It's huge. And if you can't, we have got to be inspired about, we've answered the question, I think, to your point, Patty, are we doing the right things? I think the community has by and large answered that. We have a few, like on timing of a jail and where those sorts of things. Now it's the second question, how do we do them well? Because if we are going to make good generational decisions here, we also have to be able to do these big things well. And that takes both practically, how do we pull it off, as well as vision, what is it that we want to say we achieved, what are the values that we're working towards while we pull them off. So I think both can be true. I am hoping we don't come out of this retreat with a lot of new projects, because you're going to see a lot of pictures of people getting crushed by rocks in the presentation right now. But so I agree, Patty, with you that we've got to focus on implementation, but I think that implementation can be inspiring.
And it has to be creative and visionary,
Yeah.
but it's not like we can recreate what the voters have already led us to
Jump in.
believe.
I'm going to go to Francie now. Francie, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Patty. I appreciate it. It was kind of what I was trying to say, that we have things that we have to do, and we have done priorities before, our little round stickers and stuff, and I imagine that's gonna come up again, John, but because we have so many, we are gonna have to prioritize what we can do in the near future and what we can do in the
Yes.
far future.
Yes.
And however, I do think some inspiration would be great along the way. But I think hearing from Jessica on what's possible in terms of federal grants and that kind of thing might help us make decisions that we have to make about the timing of certain projects that lie in front of us. But I like your idea of being inspired by other people, Jeffrey, but bringing in people who have done affordable housing. But on the other hand, we can also get a lot of that through research, and I think a lot of us have done that. So I kind of agree with Patty and Greg that we need to see what we have consensus on, or what we most agree on, what are our aspirations, what do we want to accomplish. But I don't think we, as John said, we don't want to go far afield of the list that's already before us.
Kelly?
Yes, Greg, go ahead, and then I'm gonna jump in.
I'm just wondering, can we have Jessica talk to us in a work session before the retreat? I don't know if she has to be at the retreat. It sounds like she's going to be dropping some information on us on the forecast for what lies ahead regarding federal funding and the shake-up there. And I'm just wondering, I'd love to go into the retreat having had that to sober me up, perhaps, you know, in terms of, so we begin the retreat understanding that and changed environment.
The only challenge was I had to book her way in advance in order to get, you know, I probably could have had her come in virtually on that.
Oh, she's actually coming.
Yeah. No, she's going to
well, she should
physically
come to
come
retreat
and
then.
and be here.
I thought it was virtual.
And she'll be able to give a broader context too. It's not just transit. Yes, she can drill down to that, and that's why we've hired her. But I think she'll be able to give a broader context of just what's happening dynamic-wise in DC right now.
Are you receiving the newsletters that we're getting from the CEO of Cozen, who's laying out?
From the who?
The CEO of Cozen?
Yeah.
Who's,
Yeah.
so that might.
With their seminars.
Just
and all
as a resource. I don't know, John, maybe you can circle back I mean, I think, you know, I think what I heard from Jeffrey that took a minute to settle in for me that might thread the needle here is, for what Greg and Patty and Francie have expressed, is if we can identify somebody who can talk about like community transformational development, that's, you know, in a way that's like a case study or something like that, like if that gives us a bit of that visionary starting to think about how we should be thinking about, you know, I'm thinking like I think like Union Station area in Denver. I mean, that's different because they were focused on sort of economic development really down there, but you know, that was a place that like had a ton of transformation in a short period of time relative to an infrastructure project and housing and economics and all that. You know, if there's a way to sort of identify someone dynamic to say, you know, this is like, we don't want to be the big dig, right? We want to be like another version of infrastructure and community change that ends up going really well. Like I would support if we can identify who that is to maybe spend a little time with us. But you know, I don't know how quickly that is to find or seek out.
Well,
but it'd be helpful to think through it.
It'll be a challenge, but why don't I just take that as direction to try and find somebody along those lines. We'll bring Jessica. Are you comfortable bringing, if Brad's available, to come in and just kind of talk on the ground, because he's very familiar with us, so it gives that really practical aspect. And then we'll try and find some of these more visionary players if you have some ideas.
Yeah, and I can ask around and think through that in my architect friend community as well.
Just
yeah.
jumped, I don't know where it even came from in my brain. Parsons. What does Parsons do? Do they do just engineer? Don't they do broader? I know they're Parsons
They're a
based out
big
of
firm.
Pasadena, but I know they're they're national now. But it seems like they do, and I see where what we're talking is how do we interconnect both what's going to happen in Snowmass, what's happening at the lumberyard, what's happening at the entrance, what's happening at the airport and the landfill and all of our other projects, possibly a jail, we don't know. How do we do the big dig at a smaller scale so that at the end of the day,
We don't want to be the big dig.
all of these things work together during construction and after completion?
Like, I'm like, how do we shepherd, like, how do we act as good leaders in shepherding, you know, the visionary phase into the actualization? You know, like, what are the leadership skills required to do that? Because
how do we survive?
we've done the visionary phase. Like, we've envisioned the things that are important to the community and the plans that are going to come to fruition, but getting that vision put in place on the ground in a way that's really positive and delivers on the promise, I think is maybe what I heard sort of Jeffrey kind of thinking through, and perhaps a way for us to get some of that inspiration in a practical way. I don't know. I'll throw that out there. I know we don't have much time to pull all that
Yeah,
together,
I think
but-
we'll do the best we can. I think we can put a good and compelling panel together for the retreat, and if we find somebody really good who's not available, maybe we'll do a mini kind of opportunity down the road to continue those discussions, because my sense is
A mini retreat.
we're gonna have lots of them. I have a feeling this year, because my sense is what we have in front of us is too big for us to just conclude all the questions in this 2-day
We
time
need to
frame.
find out what the questions are.
Exactly. That's part of what we're spending our time doing, right? Yeah.
Francie, you still have a hand up. Did you have more to contribute? You're okay. Okay.
Location was the last
yes,
thing.
yes.
So we still have 2 places. Toklat, which has the advantage of beauty and remoteness, which leads to its disadvantages, which are access and time and logistics. And the Hoffman, which would not be as inspirational a space, but logistically is certainly much easier. I would, just from a logistics perspective, if we're asking people to come and speak and doing that sort of thing, Hoffman makes more sense right now, and maybe we do a Toklat if we're doing mini retreats or something that's just us, but we can I mean, we will do and try and make happen whatever the board wants, but y'all have had some trouble reaching agreement on this one.
Kelly?
We have, I know, so Hoffman, Toklat.
No, I have a
Toklat,
suggestion.
Hoffman. Okay, yes, Patty, go ahead.
And John just brought up, but I said to John, we will have more retreats. I think using Toklat in the spring or in the summer would be beautiful and perfect. We could do a mini retreat up there. We could bring box lunches up ourselves so staff didn't have to be running up and down. I think that, and we might want to do it more than once up there because we'll probably, but I think that would be perfect in the summertime when we know transportation would be less challenging. And do the Hoffman now, and we have panelists hopefully going to be there. And it's midway for people who are down valley. And for staff, it'd be, I think, not as much of an effort as it would be for Toklat. But I definitely would like to see Toklat in the future as a place where we can go as just us, the board, and do a mini retreat in that environment.
Francie? Thank you, Patty.
You're muted,
You're muted
Francie.
again, sorry.
Gosh, I didn't even know I muted myself. I think once we get to a place and get in a room and start talking, it's not really gonna matter that much where we are. So I do think making it more convenient for guest speakers, for Charlotte, for food, for commute, for all of that, is not a bad idea. I would love to go to Toklat, and I totally support Patty's idea about doing a mini retreat there in the summer where we can, get out and about and not have to put on skis.
Okay, Jeffrey?
Ditto.
Okay. I'm good with either, and I
I'm fine
I
with it.
loved
I'm fine with it.
Toklat and the
We'll
idea
hang
of Toklat,
inspirational
but-
pictures.
I think Toklat in the summer would be
I wanted to
awesome.
ski and go have dinner with you all at Ashcroft.
If the Hoffman's that easy, let's just do that. That's
Okay.
fine.
That's all I had. I'll do my best on the panel. You'll see probably some changes in timing and that sort of thing as we work through on the agenda, but I think we have a general game plan. So thank you.
right.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
If I could, I would
Yes,
just say,
please,
I
Greg.
definitely think that teeing up day 2 on day 1 would help me. It'd be nice to be able to sleep on some things before I come to one day to try to
Okay.
hit those big things.
So maybe, you mean like going over the portfolio, setting the context for it?
Yeah,
Okay,
maybe you were
that's
gonna do that
helpful.
anyway, but
No, that's not how I had it built, but I understand what you're saying, so I'll try and get things moved around that way.
Great, thanks. Okay. Boy, we got through that. Excellent.
All right, nice job, everybody, and we're back on time. So I'm guessing this is Mr. Littlejohn. Okay, come on up, please, along with Charlotte. Hi, Charlotte. Tell us what we're doing, please.
Hello.
Hi.
So, we have been advertising, and we have a vacancy on the retirement board. And Mr. Littlejohn has submitted an application. We have one vacancy only. And I'll let you guys ask questions, and we will be having P&Z interviews here pretty soon as well.
On future agendas. Okay. Any questions for Charlotte about the position before we turn it over?
Applications are done, Mr.
Yes.
Littlejohn. Thank you. Great
Okay.
resume. It's fun to read.
Okay. Any other questions for Charlotte? All right. Please introduce yourself and tell us your interest in the role.
Excuse me. My name is Brian Littlejohn. I've been helping folks prepare for retirement for, almost 20 years now. I really enjoy that type of work, and would enjoy leveraging my experience to help the county retirement plan in any way I can. That's kind of it.
Great. Your resume speaks to that, those skills. Thank you.
Yeah, service is kind of my thing, whether I'm helping folks prepare for retirement or prior to that, I was 8 years in the Air Force. So I like helping folks.
All right. I think we have some questions. Patty and then
I think it's fascinating. You were a pilot and an engineer in the Air Force. So we were just talking about having somebody who knows engineering in airports. So ironically, and if you can help us find the money, we'd be really happy. But no, I think your resume and the University of San Francisco, I think there's probably a lot more pages you could have attached for what your experience is. But I want to thank you, and I want to thank you for bringing your own Clemson tuition. My neighbor would be very happy, Clemson grad.
Tigers.
I think, yeah, having your family live here in our community and you're wanting to participate, we appreciate that, and we kind of depend on people coming forward to help us out. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Patty. Greg.
Yeah, thanks. Welcome. Thanks for applying. I'm wondering, how did you find out, how did you hear about it? Did somebody refer you or suggest you do it? Or how did you find us?
Well, I served for a time as the county's VSO, Veteran Services Officer.
That's why I thought I recognized.
Yeah, and then COVID came along, and I stopped doing that. But yeah, that's basically, so I have a little bit of knowledge of county stuff through that.
Got it. Great. Thanks.
Sure.
Any questions?
So more theoretical, what do you think about the current interest rate environment, 2s, 10s, why are we such a flat yield curve? Have fun. Yeah, just a more professional level. The market that we're currently in, and what do you think of 2025?
I think it should be interesting.
Right answer.
But I'm always, pretty bullish.
Yeah.
It's just my natural optimistic, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen, other than to say, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Kind of how we feel.
Okay, and Francie, do you have any questions?
I don't have questions. I just want to thank you for volunteering your time. I'd say you're plenty well qualified, and I hope you'll do a good job of taking care of my retirement, because I don't intend to run again. I would like to start getting retirement here.
Okay, we've heard that now. We might hold you to that,
Yeah.
Francie. I don't know.
We all are beneficiaries of the Pickens County Retirement Program as well.
Good.
Did you have additional?
Did you
Go
grow up
ahead,
in
John.
Marin?
Gosh, I grew up all over the place. That was just kind of one of the stops. My father was a career army officer, so I graduated from high school, in Marin County, and then
Went into the Air Force.
yeah, I got a Air Force ROTC scholarship, and went to Clemson, and then I flew for a little while, and then managed construction projects, big construction projects for the Air Force for about 6 years. So
Have you ever built an airport?
I can't say that I have, no. But along the periphery, yes, support buildings and parachute drying facilities and
Jeepers.
things of that nature, and weird stuff underground, which I can't talk about.
I don't think we have a parachute drying facility, do we, John?
We need one.
And maybe that's the next.
Community amenity. Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I hear you're an optimist, you're bullish. We're going into a pretty uncertain situation, and we know there's no guarantees, no crystal ball. How does one enter into an uncertain, it seems like the ice flow just broke, or the ice dam or something is changing dramatically on a national level. Our economy is going to be affected, already is. So how does one go into, making prudent decisions? Clearly, you've got experience, and I appreciate your optimism. I share that, but it's also like, boy, when is it time to become more conservative?
I don't know that I advise, conservativeness at this juncture, but I think having exposure to some asset classes, like precious metals, prudent, going into times of uncertainty. So for my clients, for myself, gosh, if you guys are able to do it, having some exposure to gold, I think is can only be a good thing.
Gets a little lumpy under my bed.
Yeah. No, I preferred an ETF form, exchange traded fund form. It's a lot easier to work with that way. But I'll tell you what, I have helped clients who wanted to own the physical stuff, cart it from the post office to their homes. And then we installed a safe in the basement. So
I've been hearing a lot more about gold. A lot more coming out.
yeah, so I'm a big diversification guy, and I think that's a great way to diversify. Now, I'm not saying put all your eggs in the gold basket. I would never advise that, but I think when I first kind of cut my teeth in this business, great financial crisis, what was it, 2009, a lot of our clients had a large allocation to precious metals, and as a result did quite well. Do I think anything like that is coming down the pipe? No, but you never know, and so having some exposure there, I think, is a good idea.
Great, thanks.
I see Ann is here. I'll invite her up if she has anything to add about the role, but it looks like you'll meet 4 times a year.
Hi.
The second month of each quarter on the third Wednesday. Hopefully that won't conflict with your availability. But that's all. And Ann, yes, go ahead,
Yeah,
because you
just
are
a
the
little bit of
you are
background
the
about
liaison to this board
Yeah,
for
the
us.
retirement
Thank
board
you.
is actually set up by state statute, which requires 2 citizen advisory members, 2 employee members that are elected by the employees, and then the treasurer, me. And so that's the format. We also share a retirement plan with RAFTA, because RAFTA used to be part of Pickens County. And when they split from us in 96 or something, we decided to keep our retirement plans together to save costs. So if it's okay with you, you'll also serve on the RAFTA retirement board. But yes, we meet every month. We have some investment advisors who basically manage the plan on behalf of the employees. And so our role as board members is to kind of act as a sounding board and make sure that the plan's being managed in accordance with state statute as well as the employees' wishes.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
No, I think it's quite an easy decision for me.
Okay. Oh, and who was in the role that vacated?
It's been vacant for quite some time. It can be a difficult one to fill, so I'm trying to remember. We had a couple of people that stepped off as they retired. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for applying. And our process is this usually gets brought back in a resolution to the board that we formally vote on in regular session.
And we're gonna lump it in with P&Z?
If you want to wait to make that decision until I bring the P&Z applicants to you, that's fine. If not, if you're ready to make a decision today, we can.
P&Z, we have a lot of interviews, don't we? So maybe we.
4.
Yeah. I think, is everyone prepared to give direction for Charlotte to bring a resolution back to appoint Brian?
Yeah.
I think so. Okay.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thanks.
So
we
what did
appreciate
you
it.
fly? That's what I wanted to ask.
I started out in the back seat of F-15s. I was assigned to a fighter squadron, and I did that while I was awaiting pilot training, and went to pilot training and flew in an unpressurized aircraft, and I had some sinus issues with that, and so, but yeah, F-15, T-37, and that's about as far as I got, yeah.
Had to be quite an experience.
It was. I wish everyone could have that experience.
I do
because
too.
It's so, such a departure from
Earth.
life here on. It's like being strapped to a rocket. You know? It really is. And if you're lucky enough, my stomach, I was able to tolerate it. I had colleagues who did not tolerate it very well, the
Ooh, the
ups
whoop-de-doos.
and downs. And, But I was really lucky, so I never had to clean up the jet afterwards.
But that does happen.
They don't put that in the movies. Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate
Great.
meeting
Thank you very much. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Anne, for coming in. And Charlotte. Okay. Let's see. We've already done future agendas, so we can move on to board open discussion. And I know we have some things to chat about. So, John.
Yeah, so I think I'm
Should
gonna.
we do small? Should we see if there's small stuff first?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just gonna
Sorry, I
suggest. I'll take all the air out of the room otherwise with the.
I have a small one,
Okay, go ahead, Patty.
which actually I should have brought up during working
Future agendas.
future agendas. The Bayou site visit, I did watch part of the meeting the other day when I was defrosting. And we had 2 days picked, kind of circulating. Did we make a decision? I was good with either one of those days, and I can't remember which
The one
days
was
it
going to be
was.
tomorrow. I think that Rye was sussing out if everything had to be renoticed.
Yeah, we had to
Because of
look if we could do it
Okay.
prior to the.
Right, because
First
generally our
reading,
site
yeah.
visits are after first reading.
Correct.
And I understand that, and I was trying to think of anyone we'd done in the past before
So I need to
that.
check on that. I don't know. Where
Yeah,
we ended
and
up on
I
that.
myself would prefer to have first reading and continue, just because I'd have more idea of what I wanted to actually look at and see on site. But if the board chooses to do it ahead of time, I'm fine with that too. Either way.
Okay. I think we need more information.
So that'll come back to us.
I will put it down on my notes to discuss at future agendas tomorrow with Rye.
Perfect, thank you. That's all I had.
Okay. Any other small bits
Yep.
for open discussion? Oh, Francie has one. Yep, go ahead, Francie.
Yeah, it's about the Redstone Museum, and I guess there's been some confusion about where we're at with that. And it had been my recollection that we had agreed that we were interested in funding their capital campaign to buy the house to be a museum, and that we were gonna talk about it in January with our new $200,000 capital projects contingency fund. And so Jeff Beer went to, I guess, Suzanne to try and get on our agenda. And she told him, I don't know how she said it, but that she didn't think the board was interested in having a presentation on that. So I was confused by that. What do you guys recollect?
So I think we've had multiple contacts from Redstone between Charlotte and Suzanne. There has been, I don't know if you saw my email, Francie, on that
Just did, yeah.
or not. So there, just and I do think there's some confusion. So I think it's good to get recentered on this. So we gave the Historic Society a small grant to buy computers and that sort of thing. And when the board approved that, you also gave direction that we provide grant writing assistance, which we're doing through our consultant, DC Strategies. We're still getting coordinated on that. We, in terms of who we're working with on that. I think where the confusion came in that we're looking for clarification on is we thought it was to be brought back once we had done some grant applications and looking at whether it was grant match or what have you. I think, Francie, it sounds like the understanding Jeff had and the recollection you had was that we would bring a request forward to allocate a portion. I guess they're looking for 50,000. It sounds like, Francie.
Well, it's what we talked about at the last meeting when we talked about it.
Yeah, from that 200,000 to go towards that, independent of if or when they get grants. And so I think. I think Suzanne wasn't in that loop, and she is just saying she didn't know about the board's
Right.
desire to have that presentation. I was going off of the understanding that we were waiting to see if grants came back, and I think Francie raised this to me, I think Friday or such. So we can do it either way.
Are you talking Suzanne Wolf?
Yeah,
Scheduling a time for us to have this discussion?
That's
I'm confused.
That's who Jeff Beer went to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's not it. It needs to. Yeah, we're gonna have Kara as a touch point there, but Charlotte's working through that. I think what Francie, if I've got your question right, it's, hey, is it the board's understanding that we're having Redstone come in this month to ask for the 50,000 contribution? Independent of what's happening with grants, right?
Yeah.
That was your understanding.
That was my understanding.
Yeah.
Thank you, Francie. Patty?
No, my understanding it continues to be, that we would do matching funds up to 50,000 when they secured grants that needed help with matching funds. It wasn't on top of that of $50,000 to help purchase the building. I may have misunderstood our conversation, but I thought that's where we were, because it's difficult for us to help them buy a building. We don't have any information as to that. I know they could present it to us, but it's my understanding we were just doing the matching funds for grant opportunities at this time, but.
Well,
That
we
was my
talked-
understanding
At
as
the
well.
museum together, we talked about it, Patty, and I thought we talked about it several times, you and I, but anyway. What do you remember, Greg?
I don't remember enough, but I'd certainly love to see a proposal from them, and I keep expecting something to come to us that has some substance and something fleshed out. What's the vision for the place, and what do they want to do, and how much do they actually need, and do they have a contract or a tentative contract to buy it, and is the price right? And I feel like I don't know enough, but I'd certainly welcome a presentation from them. And if they want to come in and spend 20 minutes or half an hour, I would welcome that.
Do you know what?
You don't remember anything.
For Jeffrey's benefit.
So as, I don't know if you know, but we have set aside $200,000 essentially as like a capital improvements fund, you're aware, for the board to choose how to use. And so Redstone came to us last year requesting money, and we had dialogue about it, which don't have a shared remembrance of all that. So feel free to offer your thoughts.
I guess I'd welcome the presentation, but it sounds like that would be a quarter of the capital budget in one grant.
Sorry, say that again louder.
It's hard to hear you. You're so soft.
You're offering a quarter of the capital budget in one grant. That seems a little steep. So yes, a presentation sounds in order.
On the other hand, it's chicken feed.
I know, yeah.
Understood.
I guess, I don't want I guess it would be helpful if we can manage expectations a little bit based on what we might request. And we can flesh this out maybe a little bit further in our future agendas conversation, but, you know, I would like for us to be able to say to them, like, we're happy to hear your presentation, you know, and we may give you money right out the gate, or we may, you know, wait till you guys have a grant that you need match money for, because that seems to be the disparity in the opinions that I'm hearing here. So is that okay to just communicate that we're not sure what we want to do, but we think it's going to be one of these two paths, so that
And
they
we do want a
recognize when they
presentation.
come, they may not leave with a commitment with money in hand? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's what we always do.
Greg?
I would just
People
say
do.
that if we're thinking of contributing money and we make the challenge a challenge match, and say we'll match up to 50,000, that might actually help inspire people to help them. So what could it hurt for us to say we'll put a challenge out there if it comes and we like the project enough, but I just wanted to put that out there, that if it does look good, it would be helpful that we could, make a challenge up front, because they can take that to donors and say, listen, your money will go twice as far.
Patty?
I think we need to then differentiate. Are we going to do matching funds for grant and give them 50,000? We need to clarify that. And with the matching funds for grants, grant matching funds be better served for what they're trying to do? So that's a question I would have. But I definitely think we should have the discussion and maybe have Susanna Reed here also, or.
So we're going to have DC Strategies working with them. So I think, Francie, if you're getting tapped by the community, we're going to actually have Charlotte and Kara work with them to get scheduled, not ComDev or such. This is kind of outside of ComDev's
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I couldn't figure
wheelhouse.
out what ComDev was involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they should come and
So-
present to us. And my understanding of what they asked for with the grants was just access to our grant writer to help them apply for grants.
Right. And that's what we're providing that. We're not coordinating with Jeff, though. It's somebody else that we're working with. I've forgotten her name right now.
Yeah, she wrote to me.
Yeah, so we're doing that, and I think it was just confusion over
Right.
how we were structuring that ask, and so we'll schedule them to come in.
Because at the end of the
Very
day,
much.
they may need more help with getting the grant, with matching funds, because they don't think have any money to do that either. So I think that should be part of the discussion. Where can we help them get the furthest?
If there are going to be any grants out there, that's the last part of our. And then,
No, sorry, go ahead.
I had one more small thing. Water education, the water fluency course scholarship. This is coming from Lisa McDonald, is open to BoCC and county staff. We can provide you information. It looks like most states, though, for it conflict with BoCC meetings, so board members would have to, but they wanted to make sure you're aware. We can send out the information. I think board members have done this in the past. Has anyone done this here? No?
Well, I'd be interested.
You want to see the info, Francie?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Jeffrey, you
Your
might
hand
be
is still up,
interested.
Francie.
Sorry,
Anything
John.
else?
I'd love to see it,
Jeffrey will see it too.
please.
You got fluent yesterday a little bit, huh?
That was the deep end. Yeah, it was good.
Jeffrey joined our roundtable meeting.
I wasn't sure which table he was talking about he was at, because I was going round, and I'm like, which one, and where are you? He also
Okay.
got cued in to QQ at the Northwest COG meeting. They did a little
good.
presentation on the 201 plans. So that was beneficial also.
And the transportation plan. Sorry, I know it's all other business, but
Yes.
He got a little bit of everything.
Okay, so we're going to turn this over to John. It's been a very somber 24 hours in the United States with the new administration settling in and executing their real and perceived authority. And so I will turn it over to you, John, to talk about some of the heftier executive orders that may implicate our work.
Yeah, so thanks, Kelly. So January 27th, a memorandum was issued from Office of Management and Budget that basically requires all federal agencies to identify and review all federal financial assistance programs and supporting activities and review them for consistency with executive orders that have been signed by now President Trump, including protecting the American people against invasion, executive order, reevaluating and realigning United States foreign aid, putting America first in international environmental agreements, unleashing American energy, ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs, and preferencing. There are some pretty colorful sentences in the memo. I sent that around to you all. As a practical matter, federal assistance is, all federal funding to recipients or subrecipients. So if the state has received federal aid and or federal grants and re-granted them through a state program and such, those dollars would be subject. The effect is to suspend all awards, suspend all disbursements at this point until a review can be conducted by the administration and specific grants and disbursements can be approved. I think they will also be looking at all compliance issues with grants, reporting requirements, and those sorts of things. I think any of those that are out of order may lead to a cancellation of the grant. But right now, all federal agencies must temporarily pause all activities related to obligation or disbursement of all federal financial assistance. Our reading of what does that mean, and what's going to be affected. There's roughly $3 trillion that the Office of Management and Budget have identified as falling within that financial assistance bucket. It does not appear from our reading, although I want to caveat everything I'm saying by there is a lot of confusion out there. This has generated a tremendous amount of confusion. So in efforts to meet what are unclear interpretations of this guidance right now, I think we're going to see a lot of different things happening over the next couple days. But in terms of looking at federal assistance and what that strictly means, and looking at further OMB guidance that came out today, it does not appear that funding will be halted for entitlement programs or programs where payments are made directly to individuals. The memo called out Social Security and Medicare specifically, but in addition to that, we are not anticipating that mandatory programs like Medicaid and SNAP should be interrupted by this. I know there are some stories out there right now, though, that portals have gone down, and those
Yeah.
make.
There's
What's
a new
that?
posting, John. I just wanted to say here that a federal judge this afternoon temporarily blocked part of the Trump administration's plans to freeze all federal and aid. And so that's in place right now, but I just got that notice.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be evolving. So I haven't even seen that yet, Francie. This is from work we were doing this morning, but we are expecting that at the end of the day, small business, farmers, Pell Grants, Head Start, rental assistance, other programs we think are going to continue, maybe with some temporary interruptions caused by confusion about what's supposed to start, stop, and go on. That still leaves a lot out there, though, that is likely to be suspended until further review. And Francie, I guess we'll have to look at this, judges, see what's included in there. What we were interpreting is that all grants will be delayed and possibly canceled. Relative to us, we think those especially that have a scope that contradicts the environmental goals or equity goals that are called out in some of those executive orders are especially going to be at longer term risk. I will say that our RAISE grant, we had a Thursday meeting scheduled that has been canceled. So we know, I think that's an indication that at a minimum that has been suspended and will be part of this review process. Unfortunately, we're really excited about that. Finances, compiling a list. We know we have about 85 active grants right now, as the board knows. We've been very aggressive over the past few years and going after both state and federal grants. We're going to be going through culling that list to understand which of those grants, based on the evolving kind of information that's coming out, that we think may be suspended. That's especially of concern if we have an ongoing contract and project. For example, our microgrid electrification projects, we'll be working with the state to see if there's any federal funding that was backing those. But we're going to be reviewing all of those grants and trying to develop a game plan for either how we cash flow and or what do we do with these projects if funding isn't available for 30 days, 100 days, never comes back. So it's going to be a pretty big undertaking. We're also going to be watching our nonprofit partners who also rely on some of these grant sources. I know there's a lot of conversation going on today with our nonprofit partners about whether there needs to be a shutdown or suspension of their services. We may be coming back to the board depending on how critical some of the services are, particularly as they relate to public health or mental health kind of services that we fund. Do we need to think about some emergency appropriations to fill a gap or provide continuity of services? We can't answer those questions right now because everyone's trying to figure it out and where this is going to land and how much of those are going to fall into this entitlement bucket, how much is going to actually get suspended because it's not viewed as individual payments. Honestly, we're still working through that. We are going to be very clear that we don't want people to go hungry or unhoused because of this, and we'll come back with anything as far as a request in terms of emergency response. Other areas, loan and loan guarantees are also suspended. That doesn't immediately affect us, but it could affect property transfers and acquisitions in the future. Of course, we're having some discussions around a recent open space acquisition. This could affect the ability of those funds to be dispersed, and our plans there will be keeping an eye on that. We don't know a whole lot about the timeline. Federal agencies have been directed to submit information about their grants. I got a copy, whether I was supposed to or not, of the spreadsheet that was distributed to agencies by Office of Budget Management without any information filled in. I think it was like 30-something pages long of agencies that provide grants. It is massive. The scope is massive in terms of what they're going to be looking at. Our understanding is that the federal agencies are required to submit information about all of their federal financial assistance that they're providing by February 10th, which is a really quick turnaround for this scope of what we're talking about. And the review will begin from there. And an FAQ that was put out by Office of Management and Budget, they basically said they could be making decisions on a case-by-case basis, and decisions could come back quickly, and some may take longer. We don't really know. There wasn't an end date or a goal end date for this review established. So we don't really know, for example, when we might hear on our RAISE grant. As just one example of many. As we go through our list of federal grants, we'll probably be bringing other areas of concern back to the board. So obviously super fluid. Francie, if you could forward the story that you saw about the federal judge, just what you're looking
It's
at.
a
that'd be
CNN
great.
story.
Oh, CNN, okay.
Yeah. Probably on your phone.
Probably on the phone already, yeah. I'll take a look-see. You know, we'll keep looking at this information to try and assess what's impacted and what's not. But it's pretty unprecedented.
Kelly, could I,
Yes,
outside of
Patty,
our
go ahead.
realm, student loan grants, like CHAFA, is it CHAFA?
CHAFA is the housing.
No, what's the one where you get your
FAFSA?
yeah.
FAFSA, yep.
Yeah, because that could,
They said where there's an individual kind of benefit,
payment
like
too?
Pell grants, those probably won't be suspended. I don't know what happens with everything else.
and
so it's-
Medicaid, does that go directly to? So maybe
Medicaid
we
should
got some
not
hope
be
there, because
impacted by this,
those are people that could barely put food on their table now.
right? Now, even
Senior
though
food programs are at risk.
what's that?
Senior food programs are at risk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
that's
that money
gonna be-
comes from the feds to the state, then to Northwest Cog, then to our senior center for those meals.
So,
And services.
you know, I think Jeffrey and Kelly, you were seeing stories just on break about Medicaid sites and portals being
Well, the
down
New York
and-
Times is reporting Medicaid's online system has been blocked.
Yeah, so I think there's going to be a lot of confusion over the next few days. We'll probably see more of this sorted out. It has a massive impact, potentially, and we will bring back more information as we get it. I just wanted you to be aware we are going to go through a methodical process, make sure we're looking at all our grants, where we stand with them. If we need to bring proposals back for any backfills or such to keep ourselves in good stead with contractors or meet critical milestones, we may have to talk to you about that too. I don't have any good news out of this, by the way.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
So you wonder what happens when you wake up in the morning. I suggest just don't turn on the news.
Okay, well, if we don't have a meeting until next Tuesday, so please keep us apprised between now and then. I'd be particularly curious if Health and Human Services are starting to get phone calls on things. from
We're actually
people.
sending a communication out to our nonprofit partners with various resource links. We right now don't know a whole lot more than they do, but just communicating what we do know providing some links for as resources for different associations and such that are also reviewing the bill and keeping track of. I know a number of lawsuits have already been filed. Sounds like a judge has already made a decision on at least putting an injunction on a portion of this executive order. I think it's going to be really messy for a little bit. But that is one of the things, Kelly,
Being
that
optimistic there.
one of our communications is, trying to understand where our if we have critical nonprofit services related to public safety, public health, that we understand as quickly as possible where those gaps are, and so that we can bring a conversation to you about if and how we can fill them.
Have we had any communication from the sheriff's office relative to anything they're hearing about immigration enforcement?
Nothing directly to me. I know there was a conversation during X Games that I need to follow up with Michael about.
You kind of feel like COVID just hit, like 9/11 just hit. It kind of sinks your stomach into what next could hit. I should probably not say that, but yeah. I don't see anything making America great again.
No. I mean, I struggle to know at this time what the right thing, not the right thing to do, but how to be meaningfully effective. I want to strongly encourage our Attorney General's office to be bold, and our delegation in Washington to be bold and to defend the things that I think Colorado and Pickens County stand for. I don't know if that merits intentional outreach to them to articulate that, or more consideration of what we can do here to continue to provide and protect people. But, this isn't a time to sit by idly, in my opinion, and figure out ways to be meaningfully effective. Is there any other questions for John or other topics for open discussion?
I had two.
You have two? Go ahead.
One was I enjoyed receiving the debrief letter from the IMT. That was a nice pat on the back.
Oh yeah, it was great.
Yeah, that was really nice
How
to
what?
read.
I can't quite hear you, Jeffrey.
So there was a nice letter that came out post X Games, thanking all of the organizations involved in X Games. And Rosa was there, Abby was there as the PIO, Parker Lathrop gave a presentation last week. So it's really nice to be in the room, and it was a nice thank you letter to receive all the organizations involved in putting on the X Games, a lot of which are behind the scenes. So thank you, Rosa, thank you, Abby, for that. It was pretty wonderful to see, and wonderful to see everyone come together.
A great tour, as always.
And maybe a somewhat different light was I did attend with Kelly yesterday the Colorado Basin Roundtable, and some of the I think the key points to share, and correct me, the south and west parts of the state are drier than expected. The other takeaway was that the soil moisture levels are lower, so it's somewhat a negative geological or sort of river update, if you will, at this point. So we're still resting on the laurels of the Thanksgiving snowstorm, given our current snowpack. The other takeaway relevant to John's presentation was an update on Shoshone. So it went from elation, and we have 40 million to the 40 million's frozen. But the gentleman, was it Brian, I think?
Brendan,
thank you. Brendan, who gave the update, basically, I think his update was, in essence, don't freak out. And he also, the gentleman from Mesa, which is J.J. Fletcher, asked, is there a concession or some other number relative to the 98.5? And Brendan came back and said, no, this is the number. We're not renegotiating. We will hit that number. So it was nice to be in the room for that sort of reassurance and, stay the course.
But that $40 million grant could go away tonight.
It already has. I think that was.
Well, it's frozen, but
yeah,
it
frozen,
could.
Sorry.
But that was before this morning.
Yeah, it depends how it's evaluated in light of the executive orders that were listed.
And just to add, the last piece, I think, was that Brendan also shared that he was reaching out to Representative Hurd to ensure that money did come to the district.
Well, but not if the president just froze it all.
I'm trying to be an optimist here. I'm trying.
And who knows how long it'll take. Like John said, there's no.
Well, there's no hurry for that money. It'll take a little while.
Just real quick, my concern is that the delays are going to affect the long-time costs of these projects, as we know. That with time, the costs increase, and people are going to be out of work for projects that were planned, people that were hired who now don't have a project. So the ripple effect of this is huge to people across party lines, across demographics, across state lines, county lines. Everything are going to be impacted in so many ways that it's a sad day.
It is a sad day. I mean, there's no way to jumpstart an economy by freezing $3.3 trillion out of it.
And hitting the people who supported you.
The president may not go to jail, but that does not make his the powers that he assumes within his authority or
Because he
perfect
pardoned
to him.
himself, which is kind of interesting.
So.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. If there's nothing else on that very depressing note, onward. Stay strong. Defend democracy. And there will be another day. Okay. I'm going to call this. Thank you. Thank
Good
you,
job.
Grassroots. We'll see y'all next Tuesday.
All right, thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Francie.
John, when are you heading down to Dallas?
Pretty soon. When do you